The slipspace rupture tore reality like tissue paper. Master Chief had experienced dimensional breaches before, Forerunner portals, slipspace anomalies during the Covenant War, even the chaotic jumps near Halo installations where physics screamed and died. But this was different. This wasn't Forerunner technology or human engineering gone wrong. This was something else entirely, something that tasted of ozone and copper and wrongness as his Mjolnir armor's sensors shrieked warnings he'd never seen before. The last thing he remembered was evacuating civilians from a dying colony world, a Covenant cruiser's plasma torpedoes painting the night sky purple, and then the UNSC frigate's slipspace drive detonating in a cascade failure that shouldn't have been possible. Then he was falling through colors that had no names, past landscapes that existed and didn't exist simultaneously, through a tunnel of fractured light that showed him glimpses of worlds he couldn't comprehend. For 3 seconds, his armor's chronometer never stopped counting. John 1:17 existed nowhere and everywhere, suspended in the space between universes where the laws of physics were suggestions rather than mandates. Then gravity remembered he existed, and Master Chief crashed into reality with the subtlety of a Mac round. The impact crater he created in the abandoned parking structure was 15 feet wide and 4 feet deep, concrete and rebar exploding outward in a perfect circle of devastation. His shields, already weakened from whatever the hell that dimensional breach had been, collapsed entirely, the familiar whine of charging energy absent as his HUD flickered and stabilized. 3 cracked ribs, his medical readout informed him with dispassionate efficiency. Minor internal bleeding. Shields at 0% and not recharging. That last detail made his jaw tighten beneath his helmet. Mjolnir's energy shields were self-sustaining, powered by the armor's fusion pack. They'd never failed to recharge before. Chief pushed himself upright, ceramite and titanium plating groaning, and took stock. The parking structure was skeletal, abandoned years ago by the look of it. Rusted vehicles sat on flat tires, their windows smashed and bodies stripped for parts. Graffiti covered every surface, but it wasn't the territorial markings or crude art he'd expect. These were memorials, names. Thousands upon thousands of names, painted in black and red, covering walls and floors and ceilings like a carpet of the dead. "Cortana," he said, voice rough. "Status report." Silence. His AI's chamber in the back of his helmet was empty, had been since before the slipspace rupture. The ache of her absence was a familiar wound by now, but in this moment, stranded in unknown territory without intelligence support, it cut deeper than usual. Chief activated his motion tracker and weapon systems. The MA-5D assault rifle mag-locked to his back showed green, operational, with 237 rounds remaining across 4 magazines. The M6H Magnum at his hip had 60 rounds. His combat knife was, as always, unbreakable, but his shield stayed at 0, and when he tried to access the UNSC tactical network, he got nothing but static. No satellite uplinks, no friendly IFF tags, no navigation data. He was alone in unknown territory with failing equipment. Standard Tuesday for a Spartan. Chief moved toward the parking structure's edge, boots silent on debris-covered concrete despite his half-ton weight. The city beyond made him stop, made even a Spartan trained since age 6 to accept the impossible, question what his eyes were showing him. The city was massive, easily 3 times the size of New Mombasa, with architecture that seemed to defy physics. Buildings stretched toward the sky in impossible geometries, their surfaces gleaming even in the overcast afternoon light. But beneath the grandeur was devastation. An entire district of the city, maybe a quarter of the urban center, was simply gone, replaced by a crater so vast he could see the curvature at its edges. The crater's center held something that made his blood run cold, a memorial. Even from this distance, he could see the monument rising from ground zero, a twisted sculpture of metal and stone that had to be 500 feet tall. This wasn't Covenant glassing. That left smooth, vitrified earth and radiation that lasted for decades. This was something else. something that had incinerated millions of people and left their city standing around the wound like a mausoleum. "What the hell happened here?" Chief muttered, scanning the skyline. His armor's database showed nothing. No star patterns matched known colonial space. No M signatures matched UNSC or Covenant frequencies. He could be on the other side of the galaxy, or in another galaxy entirely, or... Movement. His motion tracker lit up red. 6 contacts approaching his position from the west, moving with tactical precision. Infantry formation, weapons raised. Chief dropped into cover behind a concrete pillar, rifle coming up smoothly as his training took over. Assess the threat. Identify friend or hostile. Engage only if necessary. The soldiers entered the parking structure in a 2x3 formation that would have made any UNSC drill instructor proud. But their equipment made Chief's finger tighten on the trigger. The armor was wrong. Not powered armor like MJOLNIR, but something between tactical gear and medieval plate, colored in red and gold with a stylized emblem on the chest. Each soldier carried weapons that looked like rifles but hummed with an energy signature his sensors couldn't identify. Energy weapons but not plasma, something else. "Anomaly detected in Sector 7G, the lead soldier said, voice distorted by his helmet. "Scanning for dimensional breach signature. All units maintain perimeter." "Confirmed," another responded. "Energy signature matches the Watchtower report. Regime Command wants whatever came through that breach contained or eliminated. High Counselor's orders." "High Counselor, Regime Command." The words had weight, implied a military hierarchy, but something about the tone made Chief's combat instincts scream. These weren't soldiers following orders. These were enforcers maintaining control. Movement 3 o'clock. One shouted, weapon swinging toward Chief's position. Chief was already moving, his Spartan reflexes faster than baseline human reaction times even without shields. He crossed 15 feet of open ground before the first energy bolt seared past his shoulder, the heat scorching his armor's paint. The weapon discharged with a sound like thunder compressed into a single crack, and where the bolt hit concrete, it simply ceased to exist, matter annihilated rather than melted. These were not firearms. These were weapons designed to kill things much harder to kill than humans. Chief's rifle spoke in controlled 3-round bursts, and 2 soldiers went down with armor-piercing rounds through their leg joints. He didn't kill unless necessary, and these might be legitimate military just doing their jobs. But when the remaining 4 didn't retreat or call for medic support, when instead they advanced with a cold efficiency that spoke of orders to eliminate rather than capture, Chief adjusted his assessment. He put the next burst through the lead soldier's weapon, the energy rifle exploding in a cascade of blue-white sparks. Rolled left as return fire annihilated his cover. Came up throwing a frag grenade that sent 3 soldiers sprawling. The last one got his rifle up, finger on the trigger, weapon charging with a whine that promised obliteration. And then the sky opened, and a god descended. Chief had seen a lot in 30 years of war. He'd watched Covenant carriers glass entire planets, fought the flood as they consumed worlds, stood before Forerunner constructs that could destroy galaxies. But he'd never seen anything quite like the figure that dropped from the clouds with sonic boom announcing his arrival. The man, and it was a man, humanoid at least, wore a suit of dark blue and red, a cape that shouldn't be aerodynamic somehow flowing perfectly behind him. This emblem on his chest matched the soldier's armor, but on him it looked less like a uniform and more like a brand. He was maybe 6'2", broad-shouldered, with dark hair and features that would have been handsome if not for the cold calculation in his eyes. Eyes that glowed faintly red as they fixed on Chief with the intensity of targeting lasers. The man landed between Chief and the soldiers with enough force to crack the concrete beneath his boots. Not from armor weight, Chief's sensors detected no powered systems, no mechanical enhancement. The man had just hit the ground hard enough to fracture reinforced concrete using nothing but his own mass and velocity. Impossible. Humans didn't survive that kind of impact. let alone cause it. "Stand down," the man said, voice carrying effortless authority that reminded Chief uncomfortably of Fleet Admiral Hood, if Hood could bench press a Scorpion tank. "All of you." The soldiers obeyed instantly, weapons lowering with a synchronization that spoke of absolute discipline or absolute fear. Chief kept his rifle raised, muzzle trained on the man's center mass, though some deep instinct told him 7.62 NATO rounds would be about as effective as spitting. The man turned those glowing red eyes fully on Chief, and John 1:17, who'd stared down Covenant prophets and flood gravemines without flinching, felt the weight of something fundamentally other than human assessing him. Not hostile exactly, just measuring, calculating, deciding if Chief was a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be acquired. "You're not from this earth," the man said, statement not question. "The dimensional breach brought you here. I can hear your heartbeat elevated but controlled, smell the adrenaline but no fear, your armor." His eyes tracked across MJOLNIR's battle-scarred surface with the precision of a targeting computer. "Powered exoskeleton, fusion reactor in the pack, energy shielding currently offline. Military issue, but not from any nation I recognize. You're a soldier." Chief said nothing, which was answer enough. "I'm Superman," the man continued, and the way he said it suggested Chief should recognize the name. "High Counselor of Earth, and I'm responsible for keeping this planet safe. That includes investigating dimensional anomalies that could threaten the peace we've built here." He took a step forward, hands visible and empty but somehow more threatening than if he'd been armed. "I need you to come with me, peacefully. We'll get you medical attention, repair your armor, and figure out how to send you home. But I need you to lower your weapon and come quietly." Every word was reasonable. The offer was generous. Superman's tone was even diplomatic, but Chief's instincts, honed by decades of combat, sharpened by betrayals and alien ambushes and politicians who smiled while planning to sacrifice soldiers for public opinion, screamed that something was wrong. The soldiers' fear, the memorial names covering every surface, the crater where a city district used to be, and those eyes, glowing faintly red, that looked at Chief the way a human might look at an ant. Not cruel, just separate, above, other. "Sir," one of the soldiers said, voice tight with fear barely controlled, "permission to speak." "Granted. The insurgency has operatives in this sector. If they extract the anomaly before we secure it." "They won't." Superman's voice carried absolute certainty. "No one moves in or out of Metropolis without my knowledge, but increase patrols in Sector 7 through 9. If Batman is operating here, I want him found." Batman, insurgency. The words painted a picture Chief didn't like. Insurgencies meant resistance. Resistance meant oppression. And if someone was resisting Superman's peace, there were reasons. Chief's rifle stayed up. "I don't know you, don't know this world, don't know what your peace cost." His voice was flat, mechanical almost, decades of Spartan conditioning making every word tactical. "I'll lower my weapon when I understand what I'm walking into, sir." The last word was precisely calculated respect, neither acknowledging Superman's authority nor directly refusing it. The kind of answer he'd given officers who outranked him but hadn't earned his trust. It was also, he realized as Superman's eyes flared bright red with heat, possibly a fatal mistake. "I've killed people for less defiance than that," Superman said quietly, conversationally, like he was discussing the weather. "But you're confused, displaced, and I remember what it's like to be lost and afraid." The red faded from his eyes, replaced by something that might have been sympathy. "I'm giving you one chance because you're a soldier following your training. Lower your weapon, come with me, or I'll take you by force and your armor won't protect you from what I can do." Chief's tactical analysis ran the numbers. Man who could drop from cloud level without slowing. Survived impact that should have shattered every bone in his body. Eyes that glowed with energy that looked disturbingly like the charging signature on those annihilation rifles. Spoke of killing defiant people with the casual ease of someone who'd done it more than once. The equation was simple. Chief couldn't win this fight. Couldn't even survive it, probably. Superman was either alien technology beyond anything Chief had encountered, or something else entirely, something that operated on principles MJOLNIR wasn't designed to counter. But Spartans didn't surrender, not even when the math said they should. Chief's finger moved fractionally on the trigger, his mind already calculating trajectories, escape routes, the odds of reaching cover before Superman could. The world went white. Not an explosion, not a flashbang, just white. Complete sensory deprivation, his HUD screaming electromagnetic interference warnings as every system shut down or rebooted. When his vision cleared 3 seconds later, Chief was on his back, rifle 20 feet away, and Superman was holding him down with one hand on his chest plate. Not straining, not even pressing hard, just holding, like Chief weighed nothing. Like half a ton of Spartan and MJOLNIR was a minor inconvenience. "Stay down," Superman said, not unkindly. "Don't make this." And then the parking structure exploded. Not from weapons fire, from shaped charges placed with surgical precision on the structure's support columns, timed to detonate simultaneously in a demolition pattern that would have made any UNSC combat engineer proud. The building came down in a controlled collapse, concrete and steel falling inward, and Superman moved, faster than Chief's eyes could track, a blur of motion that grabbed Chief and launched skyward before the rubble hit. They rose 50 feet in 2 seconds, Superman holding Chief like he weighed nothing, cape snapping in the wind. Below, the parking structure collapsed into rubble, and from the dust cloud came 4 figures in tactical gear moving with professional efficiency. No insignias on their armor, no identifying marks, just professionals executing a precision extraction. "Regime forces are responding," one shouted, voice filtered through a voice modulator. "ETA 90 seconds, move, move, move." "Damn it," Superman snarled, and Chief felt the air around them heat up, saw those eyes glow red again. "Not today, Bruce." Superman moved to descend, to engage the extraction team, and that's when Chief made his decision. He grabbed Superman's wrist with both hands, pure Spartan muscle strength against whatever physics-defying power Superman possessed, and twisted. It was like trying to wrestle a Covenant hunter, but Chief's leverage was perfect, his technique honed by Dr. Halsey's best combat instructors, and Superman was surprised enough that his grip loosened for just a fraction of a second. Chief fell. 50 feet wasn't fatal for a Spartan in MJOLNIR, not with proper landing technique. He hit the rubble pile in a 3-point stance, armor absorbing the impact with a groan of stressed metal, and rolled toward the extraction team. One of them, female, built like a fighter, blonde hair visible under her tactical mask, grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "Come with us if you want to live," she said, and Chief recognized the dark humor in quoting ancient movies while conducting a tactical extraction under fire. "And if you don't want to become Superman's newest propaganda piece." Above them, Superman hovered, eyes blazing, clearly calculating whether to pursue or call in reinforcements. The choice was made for him when energy bolts from approaching regime soldiers lit up the ruins, forcing him to divert attention to his own forces' friendly fire. "This way," another team member shouted, and they were moving, pulling Chief through rubble and into a drainage tunnel that shouldn't exist on any city planning map. Behind them, Superman's voice echoed with barely contained fury. "Batman, this changes nothing. I will find your hideout. I will end your insurgency. And this anomaly won't save you." Then they were in the tunnels, running through darkness lit only by emergency chemical lights, and Chief was being extracted by people Superman called terrorists, while wondering what the hell kind of war he'd just been dropped into. The blonde woman glanced at him as they ran, and even through the tactical mask, Chief could see the grim determination in her eyes. "Welcome to Earth," she said, "where Superman rules as a dictator, heroes are hunted like criminals, and the only thing standing between humanity and total submission is a man in a bat costume and whoever's crazy enough to follow him." She paused, breathing hard as they reached a junction point where more resistance fighters waited with transport. "I'm Black Canary, and you just became either our greatest asset or our biggest liability. Let's hope for both our sakes it's the former." Chief looked back toward the tunnel entrance, where daylight faded behind them and Superman's shadow was a weight he could still feel. He'd come here by accident, a refugee from another universe's war, thrown into this world's conflict without briefing or context. But he'd been a soldier for 30 years. He knew tyranny when he saw it, no matter how reasonable the tyrant sounded. And he knew that when someone offered you peace at gunpoint, or with eyes that glowed with heat vision, it wasn't peace at all. It was submission. "Take me to Batman," Chief said, voice carrying the iron certainty of a Spartan who'd made his choice. "If you're fighting Superman's regime, I need to understand why. Then I'll decide whose war I'm fighting in." Black Canary nodded, something like respect flickering across her features. "Fair enough, soldier. But I'll warn you now, once you see what Superman's peace really looks like, once you understand what he became after Metropolis burned." She gestured toward the tunnel depths, toward whatever hideout harbored this insurgency. "There's no going back, no neutral ground. You're either with the regime or you're with us. And if you choose wrong, Superman won't give you a second chance to surrender." "Good," Chief said, following her into the darkness. "I don't surrender anyway." Behind them, in the ruins of Metropolis, in the shadow of a crater where millions died, Superman hovered and watched the tunnel entrance with eyes that could see through walls and hear heartbeats from miles away. He listened to the Spartan's heartbeat fade into the distance, steady and calm despite impossible odds, and something in that rhythm reminded him of another soldier's courage. Reminded him of the man he used to be, before Lois died. Before he learned that peace required strength and strength, required control and control, required actions that once would have sickened him. "Sir," one of his regime soldiers asked, approaching cautiously. "Orders." Superman was silent for 3 seconds, his superperception processing 1,000 calculations simultaneously. The anomaly was a soldier, trained, competent, dangerous if aligned with the insurgency, but also confused, displaced, potentially reasonable if approached correctly. Batman would try to recruit him to use him as a weapon against the regime. That couldn't be allowed. "Find them," Superman said, his voice carrying across the ruins with casual authority. "Increase surveillance on all known insurgency cells. Implement Protocol 7 on underground networks. I want every tunnel, every sewer, every basement in Metropolis mapped and monitored. And contact Wonder Woman. Tell her the insurgency has a new soldier, someone who's not from this world, which means he doesn't understand what's at stake. What we've built." He turned away from the ruins, cape snapping in the wind, his perfect face hardening into the mask of absolute authority he wore like armor now. "I'll speak with him again, when he's seen what Batman's freedom really means. When he understands the cost of rebellion in a world I've sacrificed everything to save." Superman rose into the sky, a red and blue symbol that once meant hope but now meant something colder, harder, and infinitely more complex. Below him, Metropolis stretched toward the horizon, clean, safe, orderly. A city where crime was extinct because criminals didn't survive long enough to reoffend. Where peace reigned because dissent was eliminated. Where 7 billion people lived under protection purchased with the blood of anyone who dared question their protector. It was utopia, if you didn't look too closely at the graves. And Master Chief, soldier of another universe's war, had just chosen to look. The Batcave was impossible. Chief had seen plenty of military installations in his 30 years of service. UNSC forward operating bases carved into asteroids, ONI black sites hidden beneath colony worlds, even forerunner facilities that predated human civilization by 100,000 years. But those made sense within their operational parameters. They followed military logic, strategic positioning, defensible perimeters, efficient resource allocation. This was a cave, a massive limestone cavern system beneath what his escorts had called Wayne Manor, retrofitted with technology that made UNSC military-grade equipment look primitive by comparison. Holographic displays floated in midair without projectors. A supercomputer the size of a small building hummed with processing power that should have required a fusion reactor, but apparently ran on something called a cold fusion battery that violated half the laws of thermodynamics Chief remembered from his limited physics training. Vehicle bays held aircraft and ground vehicles that combined stealth technology with performance specs no human aerospace engineer should be able to achieve. And in the center of it all, standing before a holographic display showing real-time surveillance of the entire city, was a man in a bat costume. Chief had fought alongside ODST shock troopers who wore skull motifs on their helmets. He'd seen Sangheili warriors don ceremonial armor designed to intimidate enemies. Hell, he'd once watched a colonial militia commander paint his warthog to look like a 20th century hot rod because psychological warfare came in many forms. But this was different. The cowl with pointed ears, the cape that somehow didn't compromise mobility, the stylized bat emblem on the chest, this wasn't military intimidation. This was theater, mythology, a symbol designed to strike primal fear into the human hindbrain. It should have looked ridiculous. Instead, watching the man move through his cave with predatory grace that rivaled a Spartan's efficiency, Chief understood immediately why Superman called him dangerous. "Spartan program," Batman said without turning, his voice a graveled rasp that sounded more like a weapon than speech. "Military augmentation at prepubescent age, ceramic bone grafts, catalytic thyroid implant, occipital capillary reversal, superconducting fibrification of neural dendrites." He finally turned, white lenses in his cowl fixing on Chief with analytical intensity. "I've studied your armor's energy signature, analyzed the cellular damage pattern in your tissue where your shields failed, and cross-referenced your combat performance against known human limitations. You're not baseline human. You're a manufactured super soldier, created by a militaristic society that sacrificed children to produce warriors." Chief's jaw tightened beneath his helmet. The analysis was uncomfortably accurate, and the casual way Batman dissected his entire existence from a 10-minute scan was both impressive and infuriating. "I volunteered," Chief said flatly, which was technically true if you ignored that 6-year-olds couldn't meaningfully consent to military conscription. "No, you didn't." Batman moved closer, and Chief's motion tracker lit up with more contacts, Black Canary positioning herself to the left, another figure materializing from the shadows to the right, and at least 3 more in elevated positions with what his sensors tagged as high-powered rifles. The insurgency was treating him as either a valuable asset or a significant threat, possibly both. But that's not why you're here. You're here because Superman tried to recruit you. You refused, and you're smart enough to know that refusing Superman and his regime is a death sentence if you don't have protection. "I'm here," Chief corrected, "because I need to understand what I'm walking into. Your soldier," he nodded toward Black Canary, said Superman's a dictator, "that you're fighting for freedom. But dictators don't usually look like Boy Scouts, and freedom fighters don't usually have billion-dollar cave bases. So before I choose a side in your war, I need to know what actually happened to this world." Batman stared at him for 3 long seconds, then nodded once. "Fair. Alfred, bring up the Metropolis archive. Full historical context, starting 5 years ago." "As you wish, Master Bruce." A cultured British voice responded from the cave's speakers, and Chief added Alfred to his threat assessment list, probably support personnel, possibly more based on the way Batman deferred to him with unexpected familiarity. The holographic display shifted, showing a city that Chief recognized as the metropolis he'd crashed into, but whole, undamaged, gleaming in sunlight. 5 years ago," Batman began, his voice carrying the weight of someone who told this story too many times, "this Earth was different. We had heroes, genuine heroes. Superman was the greatest of them, an alien from a dead planet who grew up in Kansas, and decided to use godlike power to protect humanity instead of ruling it. He was the best of us, proof that absolute power didn't have to corrupt. The display shifted, showing Superman, but different. Same costume, same build, but the eyes were warmer. The smile reached them. He was lifting a school bus from a collapsed bridge, children waving from the windows, and even through the hologram Chief could see the genuine joy in the hero's expression. This was someone who saved people because he wanted to, not because he decided they needed protecting from themselves. Clark Kent was his human identity, Batman continued. Journalist for the Daily Planet, married to Lois Lane, another journalist. Pulitzer Prize winner, best investigative reporter I've ever met. They were expecting a child. His voice roughened slightly. Superman's greatest weakness was never kryptonite or magic. It was that he loved so completely, so absolutely, that his entire moral framework depended on protecting the people he cared about. Chief's tactical instincts immediately flagged the vulnerability. Any operator's greatest weakness was emotional attachment, but for someone with Superman's power level, that attachment became a systemic threat. Someone targeted his family, Chief said. Not a question. The Joker, Batman's hands clenched. Gotham's worst serial killer, mass murderer, terrorist. Genius-level intellect devoted entirely to chaos and suffering. He'd been my responsibility for years. I'd arrested him 63 times, and 63 times the justice system released him on insanity pleas or he escaped from Arkham Asylum. He'd killed thousands. Robin, my second partner, died by his hand, but I never killed him, never crossed that line. The bitterness in his voice was acid. That was my rule, my line, even for the Joker. The hologram shifted, showing a thin man with green hair and a permanent rictus grin that made Chief's skin crawl. He'd seen a lot of evil in his career. Covenant prophets orchestrating genocide, flood intelligence, celebrating the consumption of species. Human insurrectionists bombing civilian centers. But something about the Joker's expression went beyond evil into something worse. Something that enjoyed suffering the way normal people enjoyed breathing. The Joker stole a nuclear warhead from a decommissioned submarine, Batman said quietly. Transported it to Metropolis. Then he kidnapped Lois Lane and used a combination of kryptonite-laced drugs and Scarecrow's fear toxin to make Superman hallucinate. Made him see Lois as his greatest enemy, Doomsday, a creature that once killed him. The hologram showed it. Superman, eyes wide with drug-induced terror, fighting something that wasn't there. Lois was pregnant. When Superman's hallucination cleared, when he realized what he'd done, the hologram shifted to Superman hovering in space, hands covered in blood, screaming silently into the void. And below him, Metropolis erupted in nuclear fire. The nuclear warhead was rigged to Lois's heartbeat, Batman said, and Chief heard genuine pain in the growl. When she died, it detonated. 11 million people dead in 90 seconds. Lois, their unborn child. Millions of innocents who woke up that morning expecting to go to work, see their families, live their lives. The hologram showed the aftermath. The crater Chief had seen, but fresh, glowing with radiation that should have made the entire region uninhabitable for centuries. Except Superman was flying through it, gathering bodies, trying to save people who'd been vaporized before they could scream. Trying to fix the unfixable. The Joker thought it was funny, Batman continued, his voice like gravel grinding glass. He was laughing when Superman found him at my interrogation room in the GCPD. Still laughing when Superman grabbed him. Still laughing when. The hologram showed it. Superman, face blank with grief and rage, hand closed around the Joker's throat. The laughing stopped. Then the Joker stopped. Superman dropped the body and flew away without a word. I should have stopped him, Batman said. Should have killed the Joker myself years ago or found a way to keep him imprisoned permanently. But I didn't. I clung to my code, my no-killing rule, because I was afraid of what I'd become if I crossed that line. And because I didn't cross it, Superman had to. And crossing that line broke something in him. The hologram shifted forward in time. Superman at the United Nations, declaring that he was done asking permission to save lives. Superman dismantling a nuclear arsenal in Russia, preventing World War III but violating national sovereignty. Superman toppling a dictator in Baalia, executing war criminals without trial. Each action escalating, each choice moving further from the hero he'd been. Wonder Woman encouraged him, Batman said, and Chief heard genuine betrayal in the words. Diana believed that Superman's power gave him not just the ability but the responsibility to enforce peace. That allowing evil to flourish when you had the power to stop it was its own form of evil. She's a warrior princess, raised in a culture where strength determines leadership. She saw Superman's grief and offered him purpose, reshaped the world into something better, something safe, something that could never produce another Joker. The hologram showed Wonder Woman and Superman together, leading an army of heroes in golden armor marked with that stylized S. They were storming government buildings, forcing politicians to sign treaties and executing resistors. The regime was born. Some heroes followed him, Batman continued, believed that Superman was still fundamentally good, that his new methods were harsh but necessary. Others joined out of fear. Superman could kill any of us before we could react, and many chose survival over resistance. A few of us said no. The hologram showed a different group now, smaller, operating in shadows. Batman himself, wearing the same costume but somehow looking younger, less worn. Black Canary, Oliver Queen in green with a bow, several others Chief didn't recognize. We became the insurgency, fighting to restore what Earth used to be, messy, dangerous, free. Where people made their own choices, even terrible ones. Where governments answered to citizens, not gods. How many have died in your insurgency? Chief asked, cutting to the tactical reality. Civilian casualties, collateral damage, the cost of your freedom. Batman's expression didn't change, but Chief saw something flicker in those white lenses. Respect, maybe, for asking the right question. Thousands. The regime controls the media, the military, every major government. We use guerrilla tactics, sabotage, targeted strikes against regime infrastructure. Sometimes civilians get caught in the crossfire. Sometimes we make mistakes. He stepped closer to Chief, and the Spartan had to resist the urge to step back from the intensity. But those deaths are on their own hands, fighting for their freedom. Superman's peace is built on the graves of anyone who dared question him. Political dissidents, journalists, heroes who wouldn't bend the knee. He executed Green Arrow, my friend, Diana's ally, in front of the whole world as a message about the cost of rebellion. The hologram showed it. A man in green, bound and kneeling, and Superman's heat vision cutting through his neck before Batman could mount a rescue. The image froze there, and Chief saw tears frozen on Batman's cheeks behind his cowl. So yes, Batman said quietly, the insurgency has blood on its hands, but we're fighting for humanity's right to choose its own fate, even if those choices lead to suffering. Superman's fighting to eliminate choice entirely, to create perfect peace through perfect control. And he's willing to kill anyone, hero, civilian, or child, who threatens that peace. Chief processed this, running the tactical and moral calculations simultaneously. He'd seen tyranny before. The Covenant's theocratic dictatorship had enslaved entire species in the name of religious salvation. He'd fought alongside the UNSC, which had its own authoritarian tendencies justified by wartime necessity. He understood how good intentions paved roads to hell, how crisis could transform protectors into oppressors. But he'd also seen the cost of chaos. The insurrection before the Covenant War had bombed civilian targets, used children as shields, crippled colony infrastructure that left millions starving. Freedom without order was just another form of violence. Your war, Chief said carefully, is between Superman's tyrannical order and your chaotic freedom. Both sides claim moral authority. Both sides are willing to kill for their vision of Earth's future. He looked Batman directly in the white lenses. So why should I believe you're right? You shouldn't. The voice came from behind Chief, and his motion tracker had somehow missed the contact until she spoke. He spun, rifle coming up automatically, and found himself facing a woman in a wheelchair. Red hair, glasses, wearing a practical jacket over tactical gear. Oracle, his IFF, tagged her, based on the digital signature radiating from her custom-built computer rig. Barbara Gordon, she introduced herself, wheeling forward without apparent concern for the rifle aimed at her center mass. Former Batgirl, current intelligence coordinator for the insurgency, and someone who used to believe Superman was humanity's greatest protector. She gestured to her legs. The Joker shot me through the spine years ago trying to break my father psychologically, left me paralyzed. And you know what Superman did? Nothing. Respected Batman's territory, respected my family's choice to see me recover on our own terms, respected my autonomy as a human being even though he could have carried me to 100 different healers or scientists who might have fixed my spine. She stopped in front of Chief and he saw genuine conviction in her eyes. That's the difference. The old Superman respected choice. This Superman sees choice as the enemy. After the regime formed, he tried to fix me using Kryptonian technology, without my consent, without asking if I wanted to be fixed. I refused, said I'd adapted to my disability, and it didn't make me less valuable. He said I was being irrational, that I needed help. When I continued to refuse, when I joined the insurgency specifically because he couldn't accept that I had the right to choose my own path, she smiled bitterly. He sent Wonder Woman to arrest me for psychological instability. Would have put me in a re-education center until I came to my senses. She wheeled backward, gesturing to the cave around them. So you want to know why you should believe Batman's right? You shouldn't take our word for it. You should look at the evidence yourself. Alfred, bring up the Regime Re-Education Center files, the political prisoner execution records, the journalist disappearance statistics, the Freedom of Information Act requests that get people killed, every piece of data we've compiled on what Superman's peace actually costs. The holographic display erupted with files, thousands of them, each representing a person who'd questioned the regime and paid the price. Chief's Spartan training let him process the data faster than most humans, and what he saw made his stomach turn. Mass graves, re-education centers that were concentration camps by another name, children reported to authorities by their own parents for seditious speech and sent to youth correction facilities. A global surveillance network that made ONI's worst excesses look amateurish. This wasn't peace, this was occupation. Superman believes he's saving humanity, Batman said, standing beside Chief as they both watched the evidence scroll past. And maybe in his broken mind he is. He's eliminated crime. Criminals don't live long enough to reoffend when the penalty for theft is execution. He's prevented wars. Nations don't fight when a god enforces peace from orbit. He's created stability. People don't protest when protesters disappear in the night. Batman turned to face Chief fully, but he's done it by eliminating everything that makes us human. Choice, freedom, the right to make mistakes and learn from them. He's turned Earth into a perfect prison, and he's convinced himself the prisoners should be grateful. Chief stared at the data, thinking about Dr. Halsey's choice to conscript children into the Spartan program, thinking about his own complicity in operations that cost civilian lives for strategic gains, thinking about every order he'd followed without question, because he trusted the chain of command knew better than a soldier in the field. I was created to be a weapon, Chief said slowly. Kidnapped at 6, augmented, trained to follow orders without hesitation. The UNSC spent 20 years telling me I was protecting humanity. And most of the time they were right. But sometimes they asked me to do things that made me wonder if the people I was protecting were any better than the ones we were fighting. He looked at Batman. How do I know the insurgency isn't just another group of people who think their vision of freedom justifies any cost? You don't, Batman said simply. But here's the difference. I'll let you walk out of here right now if you want. Won't stop you, won't try to convince you, won't use force to keep you. Superman won't give you that choice. You're either with the regime or you're an enemy to be eliminated. That's the fundamental difference between us. I believe in your right to make the wrong choice. He believes he knows better than you what choice you should make." Chief was silent for 3 long seconds, processing. Then, "Show me the regime facilities. Not your data, I want to see them myself. If Superman's peace is what you claim, I'll know when I see it. And if you're lying, if you're just manipulating me to gain a super soldier for your war." He let the threat hang unspoken. "Fair enough." Batman turned to Black Canary. "Dinah, prep the stealth transport. We'll run reconnaissance on the Metropolis Re-Education Center and the Gotham Loyalty Processing Facility. If the Spartan wants evidence, we'll give him front row seats to what Superman's world really looks like." Black Canary nodded, already moving toward the vehicle bays. But Oracle wheeled closer to Chief, her expression serious. "One thing you should know before you go," she said quietly. "Superman has a telepathic Martian on his council named Jaon's Martian Manhunter. He can read surface thoughts, detect lies, even alter memories if he wanted to. If the regime captures you, if they get you into an interrogation room, everything you've seen here becomes a weapon they can use against us." She pulled out a small device that looked vaguely like a UNSC neural chip. "This is a psionic inhibitor. Blocks telepathic intrusion, prevents mind reading. It'll give you a splitting headache and make it hard to think clearly, but it's better than having your brain picked clean. You should wear it whenever you're potentially exposed to regime telepaths." Chief took the device, examining it with a soldier's practiced eye. "You trust me with this? What's to stop me from taking this technology straight to Superman?" "Nothing," Oracle said with a slight smile. "Except that if you were planning to betray us, you would have attacked Batman the moment you realized he's the insurgency leader. The fact that you're asking questions instead of making moves tells me you're genuine, or at least genuine enough that we're willing to take the risk." Chief attached the inhibitor to his armor's neural interface and immediately felt the headache Oracle had warned about. A dull pressure behind his eyes, like his brain was slightly too large for his skull. But his thoughts remained his own, private, secure. "Spartan," Batman said from the vehicle bay entrance, and Chief noticed he'd never actually introduced himself by name, maintaining operational security even in his own base. "Professional. Before we go, you should know what we're walking into. The re-education centers are heavily guarded. Regime soldiers with energy weapons, automated defenses, and potentially metahuman guards. If we're detected, Superman will respond personally within 60 seconds. We can't fight him, not directly, not with the assets we'll have on this mission. So if things go wrong, the mission objective becomes extraction and survival. Understood?" Chief nodded once. He'd run high-risk reconnaissance into Covenant-held territory more times than he could count. The principle was the same: get in, observe, get out. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary. Survive to report. "One more thing," Batman added, his graveled voice somehow softer. "You asked why you should believe I'm right. The truth is, I'm not sure I am. Maybe Superman's peace bought with blood and tyranny is better than the chaos and suffering that freedom allows. Maybe I'm the villain in this story, prolonging a war that's already lost, getting people killed for an ideal that humanity doesn't even want anymore." He turned away, cape swirling. "But I couldn't live with myself if I didn't fight. If I didn't give people the choice to be free, even if they choose chains instead. That's all any of us can do, make the choice we can live with and accept the consequences." Chief watched Batman walk toward the transport and saw something in that theatrical silhouette that reminded him painfully of himself. A weapon shaped by tragedy, pointed at an enemy, trying desperately to hold onto some core of humanity that justified all the violence. Batman had lost his parents to crime and declared war on criminals. Chief had lost his childhood to the Covenant and declared war on humanity's extinction. Both of them had crossed lines they couldn't uncross, made choices that would haunt them forever, and kept fighting because stopping meant accepting that maybe they'd been wrong all along. "He's right, you know," Black Canary said, appearing at Chief's shoulder with the silent grace of a trained operator. "About not being sure. That's what makes him different from Superman. Clark is absolutely certain he's right, that his way is the only way, that anyone who disagrees is either evil or deluded. Bruce. She glanced toward Batman's retreating figure with something like affection. Bruce questions himself every single day, wonders if he's making things worse. Keeps fighting anyway, because doubt is better than certainty when you're deciding who lives and dies. She started toward the transport, then paused. Superman will try to recruit you again. He doesn't give up on people easily, especially soldiers who remind him of the hero he used to be. When he makes his pitch, when he shows you the order and safety and peace he's built, remember this. The Joker was chaos incarnate, killed thousands, destroyed lives for entertainment. Superman executed him and felt justified doing it. Then he executed the next criminal, and the next. And somewhere along the way, criminal started meaning anyone who disagrees with me. That's the road tyranny always travels. It starts with killing monsters and ends with killing anyone who questions whether you're still the hero. Chief followed her to the transport, a sleek aircraft that combined stealth technology with speed capabilities no UNSC Pelican could match. Batman was already in the pilot's seat, running pre-flight checks with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Oracle was at the communications station, fingers flying across holographic keyboards. The whole operation had the professional smoothness of a well-trained unit, and Chief felt the familiar comfort of being surrounded by competent operators who knew their roles. Spartan, Batman said as Chief strapped into the troop bay, when we reach the re-education center, you'll see things that will make you want to engage, people being hurt, rights being violated, injustice happening in real time. You'll want to intervene to save them because that's what soldiers do. He paused, making eye contact through his cowl's white lenses. Don't. We're there to observe and extract. If we blow our cover trying to save prisoners, Superman wins. He gets you in custody. He extracts everything you know about our operations from your mind, and the insurgency loses its best chance at gaining a genuinely powerful ally. I understand the mission parameters, Chief said flatly. He'd watched civilians die during ops before, collateral damage that mission constraints couldn't prevent. Hated it every time, but understood that saving everyone wasn't always possible when strategic objectives took priority. I hope so, Batman said, and launched the aircraft into the night. They flew low over Metropolis, the city's lights painting geometric patterns below them. From the air, it looked peaceful, orderly, beautiful even. The streets were clean, no visible crime. Citizens walking confidently through districts that 5 years ago would have been too dangerous after dark. Superman's peace was real, Chief realized. You could see it in the architecture, the maintained infrastructure, the absence of poverty or decay. You just couldn't see the cost unless you knew where to look. The Metropolis Re-Education Center is located in Sector 8, Oracle's voice came through Chief's comm system. Former federal prison, repurposed by the regime 3 years ago when standard prisons couldn't handle the volume of political dissidents. Official capacity is 2,000 inmates. Actual population, she paused. Our intelligence suggests closer to 8,000 with new arrivals processed daily. The transport descended toward a fortress-like structure, surrounded by walls topped with energy barriers. Regime soldiers patrolled in precise patterns, and Chief's armor tagged at least 40 guards visible from the air, with probably 3 times that inside. Searchlights swept the perimeter with mechanical regularity. This wasn't a prison. This was a military installation designed to contain hostile forces. We're landing on the administration building's roof, Batman said, bringing the transport into a hover that shouldn't be possible for an aircraft this size. Stealth systems will mask our thermal signature for approximately 12 minutes. After that, their sensors will start detecting anomalies. We'll have 10 minutes inside to observe conditions, then extract before they can confirm hostile presence. The transport touched down with barely a whisper, and Batman was already moving, cape flowing as he deployed a grapnel line to the roof access. Black Canary followed, then gestured for Chief to come last. Professional three-man stack, each covering different angles. Chief felt the familiar rush of operational focus, his Spartan training slotting into place. They breached the roof access in silence, Batman somehow bypassing electronic locks without triggering alarms. The interior was institutional, concrete walls, fluorescent lighting, the smell of disinfectant trying to cover something worse. They moved through maintenance corridors, Batman leading them with the confidence of someone who'd studied the blueprints until he could navigate blind. Then they reached the observation deck, and Chief understood why Batman had brought him here. The main detention area stretched out below them, a massive open space divided into chain-link cells, each packed with prisoners in gray jumpsuits. But these weren't hardened criminals. Chief saw elderly men and women, teenagers, children, families huddled together in cells designed for half their number. Some were injured, bandages visible through the jumpsuit fabric. Others were just empty, broken, staring at nothing with eyes that had stopped hopping. Political dissidents, Batman said quietly, his voice tight with controlled rage. Journalists who published stories critical of the regime, teachers who refused to use regime-approved curricula, parents who objected to their children being taught Superman's ideology in schools, artists who created work the regime deemed subversive. None of them committed violence. None of them threatened anyone. They just disagreed. Chief watched as regime guards moved through the cells, not with cruelty but with bureaucratic efficiency. They weren't monsters. They were just soldiers following orders, maintaining the system, doing their jobs. And somehow that made it worse. Evil didn't need monsters when regular people would suffice. The re-education process takes 6 months on average, Oracle's voice came through the comm. Psychological conditioning, pharmaceutical assistance, and what they call clarity therapy, which is really just sustained psychological torture until the subject accepts regime doctrine. 63% successfully complete the program. 22% are deemed resistant to treatment and transferred to permanent detention facilities. 15% don't survive the process. Chief's hand tightened on his rifle. He'd seen prison camps before, covenant-holding facilities where human captives were processed before execution or experimentation. This was different only in that it pretended to be humane, to be helping people see the error of their ways. The lies somehow made it worse than honest brutality. "There," Batman said, pointing to a specific cell where a woman sat with 2 children clutching her legs. Maria Santos, journalist for the Metropolis Herald before the regime shut down independent media. She published an editorial questioning Superman's execution policies. Arrested 3 weeks ago along with her children, ages 7 and 9, because the regime determined she was psychologically unfit to raise children in accordance with societal values. The woman wasn't crying, wasn't protesting, just sat there with her children, whispering something that might have been prayers or promises or lies that everything would be okay. The kids believed her because what else could they do? "We've identified 47 journalists currently in regime custody," Oracle continued. 163 teachers, 29 artists, 84 religious leaders who preached messages incompatible with regime ideology, 1,243 parents flagged for ideological contamination risk to minors. And those are just the ones we've confirmed. The actual numbers are probably triple that. Chief forced himself to keep watching, to document everything his armor's recording systems could capture. This was intelligence. This was evidence. This was the truth Batman wanted him to see, and he owed it to these prisoners to witness what was being done to them in the name of peace. A door opened in the detention area, and a regime official entered, female, wearing the red and gold uniform with the efficiency of middle management doing quarterly reviews. She carried a datapad and moved to Maria Santos's cell with the casual authority of someone who held absolute power over other humans and had stopped thinking about what that meant. "Maria Santos," the official said, voice carrying in the oppressive silence, "you've completed week 3 of clarity therapy. Do you understand why your previous beliefs were harmful to social stability? Maria looked up, and Chief saw the careful calculation in her eyes. She was weighing her response, trying to figure out what answer would keep her children safe, what compromise she could make with her soul to protect the people she loved. I understand that questioning the High Counselor's wisdom creates social discord, Maria said slowly, each word clearly painful. I understand that my editorial put others at risk by encouraging doubt in the regime's protection. Good. The official made a note on her datapad. You're progressing. However, your children will remain in juvenile processing until we're confident you've internalized these lessons sufficiently to provide a stable ideological environment. We project another 3 months before family reunification can be considered. The younger child, maybe 7 years old, started crying. Not loud, terrified sobs, but the quiet, hopeless crying of someone who'd learned that noise brought punishment. Maria held her daughter tighter, and Chief saw her lips move. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The official left, and Maria sat there holding her children in a cell where she'd been imprisoned for words, being psychologically tortured into believing that questioning authority was a crime deserving of family separation. And this was just one cell, one prisoner, one family being systematically broken by a system that believed it was saving them. Enough, Chief said, voice rough. I've seen enough. Batman nodded and led them back toward the extraction point, moving through the maintenance corridors with renewed urgency. But as they reached the roof access, alarms suddenly blared, not the facility alarms, but something worse. A sound like reality itself screaming. Proximity alert, Oracle's voice cut through the comm with genuine fear. Superman incoming, ETA 15 seconds, abort, abort, abort. Chief's motion tracker lit up red, and through the roof skylight he saw him coming. A red and blue streak descending from cloud level like divine judgment, moving faster than any human could track. Superman hit the prison yard with enough force to crack concrete, and his eyes swept across the compound with vision that could apparently see through walls and detect heartbeats from miles away. Those eyes locked onto their position. He knows we're here, Batman snarled, already running for the transport. Move now. They burst onto the roof as Superman took flight, closing the distance between them impossibly fast. Black Canary was first into the transport, then Chief, then Batman diving for the pilot's seat as energy barriers erected around them. Whatever stealth technology they'd been using apparently worked in reverse as armor. The transport launched skyward, engines screaming, and Superman was right behind them. Not pursuing, matching, packing them with casual ease, cape flowing, arms crossed, expression more disappointed than angry. Batman, Superman's voice came through the transport's external speakers, somehow audible over the engine roar. You brought your new soldier to one of my re-education centers. Wanted him to see the injustice of helping confused people understand why their harmful ideologies threaten everyone's safety. He moved closer, and Chief saw the transport's shields flaring as Superman's presence alone generated enough electromagnetic interference to stress their systems. But did you show him the crime statistics? Did you explain how many of those innocent journalists were inciting violence against regime personnel? Did you mention that Maria Santos's editorial specifically called for my assassination? She called for your accountability, Batman snarled back. For oversight, for limitations on power. That's not assassination, that's democracy. Democracy, Superman said the word like a curse, is 2 wolves and a lamb voting on what to eat for dinner. The wolves chose poorly for millennia and millions died because I respected their right to make terrible decisions. Never again. His eyes began to glow red. Turn around, come back. We'll discuss this rationally, work out our differences. I'm trying to be patient with you, Bruce, because we were friends once, but my patience has limits. So does my willingness to bow to a tyrant, Batman said, and hit the afterburners. The transport accelerated beyond what should be possible, G-forces slamming Chief back into his seat with enough pressure to crack normal human ribs. But Superman just smiled, a cold, terrible expression, and matched their speed without apparent effort. "You can't outrun me, Bruce. You know that. This transport will run out of fuel in approximately 8 minutes. Then what? You crash in Gotham and I pull you from the wreckage. You deploy some contingency weapon that might slow me down for 30 seconds. How many more times are we going to play this game before you accept that you've already lost?" Batman didn't answer, just kept flying, kept pushing the transport's engines past their safe limits, kept running from a man who could catch them anytime he chose. And Chief realized that was the point. Superman wasn't catching them because he wanted Batman to understand the futility of resistance. Wanted the insurgency to feel hunted, helpless, dependent on Superman's mercy for their continued existence. It was psychological warfare, and it was devastatingly effective. "Spartan," Superman continued, his voice somehow finding Chief through the transport's shielding. "You're a soldier. You understand strategic reality. Batman's insurgency has no chance of victory. The regime controls 97% of Earth's military assets, every major government, and enough metahuman operatives to end this rebellion in days if I ordered it. The only reason the insurgency still exists is because I allow it to. Because I believe Bruce will eventually see reason and rejoin the cause of protecting humanity." Chief said nothing, but Superman apparently didn't need a response. "You crashed into my world by accident. You don't understand what happened to make me choose this path. You don't know what it's like to hold the woman you love as she dies by your own hand, to hear 11 million voices scream and know you failed to save them, to realize that mercy and restraint and respect for human choice enabled the Joker to kill everyone you ever cared about." His voice roughed slightly, genuine pain bleeding through. "I tried it your way, Bruce. I respected laws, honored sovereignty, let humans make their own choices. And they chose the Joker, chose chaos, chose 11 million deaths. So I made a different choice. I chose to save them from themselves." The transport's engine started failing, warning lights cascading across Batman's console. They'd pushed too hard for too long, and the systems were dying. Batman aimed them toward Gotham's industrial district, preparing for what would be either a controlled crash or an uncontrolled one, depending on how much the engines held together. "I'm giving you one last chance," Superman said, and his tone carried absolute finality. "Land the transport. Surrender peacefully. I'll ensure Batman faces trial rather than summary execution, and I'll help you return to your home universe if possible. Refuse, and I stop being patient. I stop pretending this rebellion has any chance. I end it tonight, and everyone who dies in the process. Insurgency, civilian, anyone caught in the crossfire. Their blood is on your hands for choosing violence over peace." Batman looked at Chief, white lenses unreadable. The question was implicit: your choice, soldier. Surrender or fight, give up or keep running, accept the tyrant's mercy or face his wrath. Chief thought about Maria Santos and her children, imprisoned for words. Thought about Superman's 11 million ghosts. Their deaths used to justify every subsequent execution. Thought about the line between protection and oppression, between peace and prison, between the hero who saved lives and the tyrant who ruled them. "Keep flying," Chief said quietly. Batman's lip twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "Hold on." The transport's engines failed completely, and they dropped like a stone toward Gotham's ruins. Superman watched them fall for 3 seconds, long enough to let them know he could save them anytime he chose, then descended with them, matching their velocity, apparently content to watch them crash and see if they survived before making his next move. But Batman wasn't done. At terminal velocity, 200 feet from impact, he deployed every emergency system simultaneously: parachutes, reverse thrusters, foam cushioning, and some kind of localized gravity manipulation that Chief's sensors couldn't even classify. The transport hit an abandoned factory with enough force to shatter its hull, but the crew compartment remained intact, and Chief's Spartan augmentations let him roll out of the wreckage with only minor injuries. Batman and Black Canary were already moving, disappearing into Gotham's shadows with practiced ease. Chief followed, motion tracker painting Superman's position as the god descended to examine the crash site. "You won't make it to your safe house," Superman called after them, voice somehow carrying through Gotham's industrial ambience. "I'll find you. I always do. And when I do, when you're cornered and out of options, you'll wish you'd taken my offer of mercy." But Batman just kept running, leading them through tunnels and ruins that Superman could have excavated with heat vision, but apparently chose not to, the psychological game continuing even now. They ran for what felt like hours, but Chief's chronometer showed as 12 minutes, until finally Batman stopped at a nondescript maintenance tunnel and opened a hidden entrance. "Welcome to the Resistance, Spartan," Batman said, breathing hard despite his apparent peak conditioning. "Still think both sides are equally valid." Chief looked back toward where Superman hovered above the city like a guardian angel or vengeful god depending on perspective, and made his choice. Not because Batman was definitely right or Superman was definitely wrong, but because Chief had spent 30 years being told what to do by people who claimed to know better, and he'd learned the hard way that freedom, messy, dangerous, costly freedom, was worth fighting for even when the tyrant promised perfect peace. "No," Chief said, "I think one side believes people should choose their own fate, the other believes it knows better than them, and I've been on the wrong side of that choice too many times to make the same mistake here." He chambered a round in his rifle, the familiar sound grounding him in purpose. "So tell me, Batman, how do we kill a god?" Batman's lips finally pulled into something like a smile, dark and grim, and entirely without humor. "Carefully. But first, we make him understand that not everyone will bow just because he's stronger. Some of us will fight until we can't anymore, and our defiance will remind the world what it means to stand up rather than kneel down." He gestured Chief into the tunnel. "Come on, we've got work to do." And somewhere above them, Superman listened to their heartbeats fade into Gotham's depths and wondered why they couldn't see that he was trying to save them. That everything he did, every execution, every re-education, every choice that looked like tyranny, was necessary to prevent another Metropolis, another Lois, another 11 million graves. He was the hero, he knew he was. The fact that the people he was saving couldn't see it just meant he hadn't saved them completely yet. But he would. He'd save them all, even if it killed them. The insurgency's hidden bunker beneath Gotham's Bowery district was a study in controlled paranoia. Chief had infiltrated enough ONI black sites to recognize the design philosophy: multiple entry points for emergency extraction, electronic countermeasures against surveillance, reinforced structure capable of withstanding orbital bombardment, and enough supplies to sustain operations for months if necessary. But where ONI facilities felt sterile and institutional, this place had the worn, lived-in quality of a resistance cell that had been fighting too long with too few resources. Sleeping quarters lined one wall, bunks stacked 3 high, occupied by people in various states of rest or exhaustion. A makeshift medical bay held wounded fighters being treated by a woman in scrubs who worked with the efficient precision of someone who'd learned battlefield medicine through necessity rather than formal training. Weapons racks held an eclectic mix of equipment: conventional firearms, energy weapons that looked salvaged from regime forces, and exotic devices that Chief's sensors couldn't classify but assumed were magical or alien in origin. And in the center of it all, gathered around a holographic tactical display, stood the core of Batman's insurgency. "This is," Batman introduced Chief to the assembled group without preamble or ceremony, "dimensional anomaly, military background, enhanced physiology. He's seen what the regime does to dissidents. He's choosing to fight." The room's occupants studied Chief with expressions ranging from hope to skepticism to barely concealed hostility. Black Canary he already knew. The others were new contacts that his threat assessment protocol automatically cataloged as he met each gaze. A woman with short dark hair and facial scars that spoke of recent torture stepped forward first. "Catwoman," she introduced herself, voice carrying the rough edge of someone who'd spent too long screaming. "Former thief, current insurgency infiltration specialist. I've stolen from Superman's fortress, Wonder Woman's embassy, and regime military installations across 3 continents." She crossed her arms. "You look like a military. That means you follow orders, maintain hierarchy, trust the command structure. Batman's our leader here, but we're not soldiers, we're survivors. Can you work with that?" "I've worked with worse," Chief said, which was technically true if you counted the uneasy alliances with Covenant separatists during the schism. "As long as everyone's committed to the mission, I don't care about military protocol." A massive figure stepped from the shadows next, easily 7 feet tall, built like he could arm wrestle a brute chieftain and win. But it was the gray, rocky texture of his skin that made Chief's sensors flag a potential threat. Not armor, biology. "Killer Croc," the figure rumbled, voice like gravel in a cement mixer. "Used to be Gotham muscle for hire. Then the regime decided people like me, metahumans who weren't heroic enough, needed to be contained for public safety." He flexed hands that ended in claws capable of shredding ceramite plating. "Spent 8 months in a regime containment facility before the insurgency broke me out. I'm here because Batman's the only one who treats me like a person instead of a monster." Chief nodded acknowledgement. He'd fought alongside Sanghaley, who terrified baseline humans just by existing. Appearance meant nothing compared to actions. A younger man approached next, maybe early 20s, with cybernetic components visible at his temples and hands. "Victor Stone," he said, and there was immense pain in the introduction. "Used to be cyborg, used to be Justice League, used to think Superman was making hard choices for the greater good." His cybernetic eye flickered with data streams. "Then I realized the regime was using my father box technology to build surveillance networks, to track and categorize every human on Earth, to create the infrastructure for absolute control. When I objected, when I threatened to shut down the systems I'd helped build." He touched the scars at his temples. "Superman had my cybernetics forcibly removed. Said if I wouldn't use my gifts responsibly, I didn't deserve to have them. Regime scientists tried to extract the technology without killing me. They came close on both counts." "I'm sorry," Chief said, and meant it. He understood what it was like to have enhancements forced on you as a child, to have your body modified for someone else's purpose. Having those modifications then stripped away because you refused to be the weapon they designed you to be. That was a violation on multiple levels. "Don't be sorry," Victor said with bitter determination. "Be effective. Batman says you're a soldier who can think tactically. We need that. Need someone who understands how to fight wars instead of just surviving them." A woman in red and gold emerged from the medical bay, removing bloodied surgical gloves. She was tall, athletic, with the kind of classical beauty that seemed out of place in a resistance bunker. "Wonder Girl," she introduced herself, and Chief immediately flagged the connection. "Cassie Sandsmark. I trained under Diana, believed in her philosophy of warrior justice. Thought Superman's regime was harsh but necessary after Metropolis." Her jaw tightened. "Then Wonder Woman executed my mother for providing medical treatment to insurgency fighters. Said anyone who aided terrorists was a terrorist themselves and deserved the same fate. Diana killed her in front of me to teach me the cost of misplaced loyalty. She expected me to thank her for the lesson." The room went silent at that. Everyone present was apparently familiar with the story but still affected by hearing it spoken aloud. Chief understood immediately. This woman had been forced to watch her mentor murder her mother as an object lesson in absolute loyalty. The psychological damage from that kind of betrayal ran deeper than any physical wound. "I'm sorry for your loss," Chief said carefully, recognizing that words were inadequate but protocol demanded acknowledgement. "Save the sorry," Wonder Girl said, her voice hard as titanium. "Help me make Diana regret what she became. That's all I want." An older man stepped forward, late 50s, graying hair, wearing a jacket that barely concealed the shoulder holster underneath. "Commissioner James Gordon," he introduced himself with the weary authority of someone who'd spent decades in law enforcement. "Former Gotham City Police Commissioner, current Insurgency Logistics Coordinator. I've spent 30 years trying to maintain law and order in a city that breeds chaos like bacteria. And you know what I learned?" He met Chief's visor with eyes that had seen too much. "There's a difference between order and justice. Superman offers perfect order, no crime, no dissent, no variation from approved behavior. But justice requires choice. Requires the possibility of being wrong. Requires trusting people to make their own decisions even when those decisions lead to suffering. I joined the insurgency the day Superman executed a 16-year-old kid for spray painting tyrant on a regime recruitment center. That's when I knew we'd traded justice for something that just looks like it from a distance." Chief processed the assembled group. A thief, a metahuman the regime deemed monstrous, a depowered hero who'd been mutilated for dissent, a warrior betrayed by her mentor, and a cop who chose principle over order. This wasn't a military unit with a clear hierarchy and defined roles. This was a collection of survivors held together by shared trauma and Batman's leadership, fighting a war they had virtually no chance of winning. He'd fought alongside worse odds against the Covenant. At least these people chose to be here. "You've met the core team," Batman said, gesturing to the holographic display. "We have 73 active operatives across 8 cells globally, plus approximately 300 auxiliary members who provide intelligence, resources, or safe houses, compared to the regime's military capacity." He pulled up statistics that made the tactical situation clear. "We're outnumbered 100,000 to 1, outgunned by weapons we can't match, and outpowered by metahumans who can level cities." "So how are you still alive?" Chief asked, because the math didn't make sense. An insurgency this small with that large a power disparity should have been crushed months ago. "Because Superman wants us alive," Batman said bluntly. "He could end this tomorrow. Could use his Martian Manhunter to telepathically scan every human on Earth and identify every insurgency member. Could have Wonder Woman lead a strike force that would eliminate our leadership before we could evacuate. Could personally hunt down every cell in a week if he devoted his full attention to it." He paused. "But he doesn't, because we serve a purpose in his world. We're the example of what happens when you choose freedom over security. We're the cautionary tale he can point to when people question whether his methods are necessary. Look at Batman's terrorists," he says. "Look at the chaos they cause, the lives they endanger. He lets us exist so he can justify everything he does to stop us." Chief understood immediately. Psychological operations turned into a long-term strategy. The insurgency wasn't just Batman's resistance. It was Superman's proof that resistance was futile and dangerous. "You're not fighting to win," Chief said slowly. "You're fighting to remind people that fighting is possible." "Exactly." Batman's expression behind the cowl was grim satisfaction that Chief understood the strategic reality. "Every mission we complete, every facility we sabotage, every political prisoner we free, it's not about tactical victory. It's about showing Earth's population that Superman isn't invincible, that his perfect order has cracks, that some people will never stop resisting no matter how powerful the tyrant becomes. We're a symbol, same as Superman. He represents absolute security through absolute control. We represent the possibility of freedom, no matter how costly." "Symbols don't win wars," Chief said, falling back on tactical assessment. "You need force multiplication, strategic assets, something that can actually threaten Superman's power base." "We have something," Victor said, his cybernetic fingers dancing across the holographic display. "Multiple somethings, actually, but they're all high-risk, low-probability of success plans that would require either miracles or suicide missions to execute." The display shifted. showing 3 operational plans labeled with military efficiency. Operation KALIBAK, Infiltrate Apocalypse, negotiate alliance with Darkseid against Superman. Chief's immediate assessment, insane, trading one tyrant for a worse one. Operation Shazam, locate and recruit Earth's magic users, exploit Superman's vulnerability to magical attacks. Tactical assessment, possible but magic users were either dead, in hiding, or had already chosen sides. Operation Phantom, access Phantom Zone, release Kryptonian criminals as a distraction enemy combatants. Chief's gut reaction, desperate. Releasing imprisoned aliens with Superman's power level would definitely distract him, but the collateral damage would be catastrophic. These plans are all terrible, Chief said flatly. Yes, Batman agreed without hesitation, which is why we haven't executed any of them. We're waiting for an option that isn't just elaborate suicide with extra steps. He looked at Chief directly. But you're a strategic thinker who's fought wars against overwhelming odds. You've seen our capabilities, understand our limitations, and observed the enemy's force structure. So I'm asking you, Spartan, if you were planning our war, how would you fight a god? Every eye in the room fixed on Chief, waiting for the soldier from another universe to solve a problem that had stumped Earth's greatest tactical mind for 3 years. The pressure was immense, expectations impossibly high, and Chief's first instinct was to deflect. He'd been on Earth less than 12 hours, didn't understand the full political landscape, needed more intelligence before making strategic recommendations. But then he thought about the Covenant War, about facing an enemy with superior numbers, better technology, religious zealotry that made them fearless, and a 3-decade head start on military expansion. The UNSC had been losing that war from day one, losing colony after colony, losing fleet engagements, losing ground battles. Every tactical projection showed humanity's extinction within 20 years. And yet they'd won, not through superior firepower or miraculous technology, but through asymmetric warfare, strategic flexibility, and the willingness to make choices that more ethical commanders wouldn't consider. You don't fight the god, Chief said slowly, working through the tactical logic. You fight his support structure. Superman is powerful, maybe invincible in direct combat, but his regime requires infrastructure, personnel, public support, and strategic resources. You can't kill him, but you can make ruling impossible, make every day cost more than it's worth, turn the population he's trying to protect against him. Force him to choose between being a tyrant and being a hero, and make sure everyone sees which choice he makes. Batman leaned forward, and Chief saw genuine interest in his posture. Continue. The regime controls information, right? Chief gestured to the holographic display. Media, internet, surveillance networks. That means the population only sees what Superman wants them to see. Crime statistics showing peace, propaganda about the insurgency's terrorism, edited footage that makes every regime action look justified. Correct. Oracle's voice came from speakers embedded in the bunker's ceiling. The regime has absolute media control. We hack their networks regularly, but they patch vulnerabilities faster than we can exploit them, and any broadcast we manage gets labeled as terrorist propaganda within minutes. Then don't broadcast, Chief said. Don't try to compete with the regime propaganda through their channels. Go physical, grassroots, person-to-person networks that surveillance can't easily track. He'd seen this during the insurrection. Rebels who couldn't match UNSC communication dominance used dead drops, coded graffiti, and trusted human networks to coordinate. You have 300 auxiliary members providing intelligence and resources. Use them to distribute evidence of regime atrocities. Physical media, recordings, photographs, documents, information people can hold, hide, share with their neighbors without electronic trails. Commissioner Gordon nodded slowly. Old-school samizdat, like Soviet dissidents distributing banned literature. It's slow, inefficient, but surveillance systems can't intercept paper and word of mouth. Exactly, Chief continued, his tactical brain engaging fully now. The regime's power comes from public acceptance that Superman's methods are necessary. If you can erode that acceptance, show ordinary citizens the re-education centers, the mass graves, the executed teenagers, you change the calculation. Superman can rule through fear, but ruling a hostile population is exponentially harder than ruling a compliant one. There's a problem, Catwoman said, arms crossed. Most of Earth's population genuinely supports the regime. Crime is gone. Wars are over. People feel safe for the first time in their lives. They don't want to hear that their safety costs innocent lives. That's an uncomfortable truth they'd rather not face. Chief had encountered that before too. UNSC colonists who didn't want to acknowledge that their planet's security came from child soldiers like him, who preferred comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. Then you make it impossible to ignore. You don't just show them evidence, you force them to choose. Create situations where Superman has to reveal his true methods in public, where he can't hide behind propaganda or claim you're manipulating footage. How? Wonder Girl asked, leaning forward with predatory focus. Chief pointed to the re-education center they'd infiltrated earlier. You said there are thousands of political prisoners in facilities across Earth. Journalists, teachers, artists, people with public profiles, with families who know they're imprisoned. The regime claims these people are being helped, given clarity therapy to overcome harmful ideologies. He looked at Batman. What happens if you break them out, all of them, simultaneously? Every political prisoner in every facility, released in a coordinated operation that the regime can't suppress before the prisoners reach their families, their communities, their former audiences. Let them tell their stories. Let the population hear from actual victims instead of filtered propaganda. Batman's expression shifted, not quite a smile, but something close. The kind of look a predator gets when prey makes a fatal mistake. A mass liberation operation, hitting 12 facilities simultaneously across the globe. The regime would respond, but they can't be everywhere at once, and even Superman can't recapture thousands of prisoners before they spread across the population. It would require perfect coordination, Victor said, already running calculations on his portable computing rig. Simultaneous strikes within a 30-second window, or the regime's response to the first facility alerts the others. We'd need assault teams for each location, transportation for evacuating prisoners, safe houses to hide them afterward, and enough force to delay regime reinforcements for at least 10 minutes per site. We don't have the personnel, Black Canary said flatly. 73 operatives can't assault 12 facilities simultaneously. Each site has maybe 50 to 100 guards, automated defenses, and a potential metahuman response. We'd need at least 10 trained fighters per facility to have any chance of success. Then we recruit more, Chief said, thinking about how the UNSC had activated militia forces during the Covenant War. Your auxiliary members, 300 people who already oppose the regime. How many of them have military or law enforcement backgrounds? How many could be trained for basic assault operations in a short time frame? Gordon pulled up files on the holographic display. 47 with military experience, mostly UNSC or foreign national defense forces, before the regime absorbed all military structures. 63 with law enforcement backgrounds. Maybe another 100 with sufficient physical capabilities to be combat effective with intensive training. He paused. But training takes time we might not have, and arming that many people with weapons capable of fighting regime soldiers means raiding regime armories, which increases our exposure risk exponentially. I can handle the training, Chief said with absolute certainty. Give me 3 weeks, and those 100 auxiliaries become combat-effective soldiers. Won't be Spartans, won't match O&I special forces, but they'll be good enough to execute basic assault operations against standard military targets. 3 weeks, Batman repeated, clearly running his own calculations. The regime is already hunting for you specifically. Superman wants to recruit or eliminate you before you become too deeply embedded in the insurgency. If we pull back operations to focus on training, if we go quiet for 3 weeks while you prepare our forces, Superman will know something's coming." "Good," Chief said. "Let him know. Let him worry. Uncertainty is a weapon. Make him guess what we're planning, force him to spread his resources defending potential targets instead of concentrating force. Every facility he reinforces is a resource he can't deploy elsewhere." Killer Croc laughed, a sound like rocks tumbling down a mountain. "I like this guy. He thinks like Batman but without all the moral angst." "I don't kill unless necessary," Chief clarified, because that distinction mattered. "But I don't pretend war is anything other than what it is. The regime is systematically oppressing Earth's population, and stopping that requires force. Surgical, precise, morally targeted force, but force nonetheless." Batman studied Chief for a long moment, and Chief got the distinct impression he was being evaluated against some internal standard. Finally, Batman nodded. "All right, we'll implement your plan with modifications. 3 weeks of intensive training for auxiliary forces while our core team conducts diversionary operations to mask our actual preparation. Oracle will coordinate intelligence on all 12 target facilities. Victor will work on electronic countermeasures to delay regime's communications during the operation. Catwoman will arrange transportation networks for evacuating prisoners. Gordon will prepare safe house networks for hiding thousands of refugees." He turned to Chief directly. "And you'll train our soldiers, turn auxiliary members into operators capable of executing military assaults against superhuman threats. Think you can do that?" Chief thought about the Spartan IV program, about watching Dr. Halsey turn volunteers into enhanced soldiers in months, instead of the years the Spartan I program required. He thought about training exercises on Reach, teaching recruits to fight Covenant forces that outmatched them in every measurable way. He thought about 30 years of warfare distilled into lessons learned through blood and survival. "Yes," Chief said simply. "Then we have a plan," Batman said, and for the first time since Chief had arrived in this universe, he heard something like hope in the Dark Knight's voice. "Operation Liberation, 3 weeks of preparation, 12 simultaneous strikes, thousands of prisoners freed to tell the truth about Superman's peace, and if we're lucky, if we execute flawlessly, if Superman makes a mistake responding." He pulled up a holographic image of Earth with regime facilities marked in red. "We turn public opinion. We show the population what their security actually costs. We give them the choice Superman's been denying them, comfort over conscience or truth over tyranny." "And if they choose comfort?" Wonder Girl asked quietly. "If the population sees the truth and decides they don't care, is peace worth any price?" Batman's expression hardened. "Then at least they'll have chosen. At least it'll be their decision instead of Superman's. That's all we can do, give people the freedom to make their own mistakes. What they do with that freedom is up to them." Chief nodded in understanding. He'd fought for humanity's survival for 3 decades, watching colony after colony glass, civilian populations evacuated or slaughtered, entire worlds lost to Covenant extermination campaigns. And through all of it, the people he was protecting never thanked him, never even knew his name, and didn't want to acknowledge the child soldiers dying to keep them safe. But he kept fighting anyway. Not because the people he protected deserved it or appreciated it, but because they had the right to exist, to choose their own fates, to make their own mistakes. That right was worth dying for, even if they didn't understand or care. "When do we start?" Chief asked. "Now," Batman said, already moving toward the bunker's training area. "We have 3 weeks to turn ordinary people into soldiers capable of fighting gods. Let's not waste time." As Chief followed him, Black Canary fell into step beside him. "You know," she said quietly, "Superman's going to come after you specifically. He's not going to let his newest recruitment target become our strategic asset. When he realizes you're training our forces, when he understands you're preparing a major operation." She paused. He'll try to stop you, personally. And while I've seen you fight, while I know you're enhanced and skilled, he's Superman. He's fast enough to catch lightning, strong enough to move planets, and durable enough to survive nuclear weapons. How exactly do you plan to beat that? Chief had fought Covenant prophets in their gravity thrones, flood pure forms that regenerated faster than he could damage them. Forerunner constructs designed to maintain galactic order through overwhelming force. He'd learned that unbeatable enemies stayed unbeatable only until you found their weakness, exploited their assumptions, or changed the tactical parameters entirely. I don't plan to beat him, Chief said honestly. I plan to survive him long enough to complete the mission. That's all any soldier can do against overwhelming odds: survive, adapt, accomplish the objective. Superman can be stronger and faster and more powerful. Doesn't matter as long as I'm smarter and more committed. Black Canary smiled, genuine warmth in the expression. Yeah, she said, you're going to fit in fine here. Across the city, in the fortress of solitude floating above the Arctic tundra, Superman stood before a holographic display showing Gotham's layout. His super hearing had picked up pieces of the insurgency's conversation. They'd been careful, using electronic countermeasures and lead-lined rooms, but Superman's senses were extensive enough that fragments came through. Training 3 weeks, major operation, the Spartan is taking an active command role. Diana, Superman said into his communicator, and Wonder Woman's response came instantly. Yes, Cal. The anomaly soldier has chosen Batman's side. He's planning something, coordinating with the insurgency, organizing their forces. I want full surveillance on Gotham's underground networks. Deploy Amazon trackers if necessary, and prepare a strike team. If the Spartan becomes too valuable to the insurgency, we'll need to extract him before he can damage our operational security. There was a pause. Are you sure? Forcing the issue might push him deeper into Batman's camp. If we're patient, if we give him time to see that Bruce's cause is hopeless. No, Superman interrupted, and his voice carried steel. I gave him a chance to choose wisely. He chose rebellion, and I can't allow a strategic asset of his capability to strengthen the insurgency's operations. Either he rejoins the side of order, or he's eliminated as a threat. There's no middle ground anymore. Another pause, longer this time. Understood. I'll prepare the team. But Cal, when did we stop trying to save people? When did extraction and elimination become our first options instead of our last ones? Superman looked at the holographic display showing Earth below him. 7 billion lights representing 7 billion lives under his protection. Lives he'd sworn to save, even from themselves. We stopped trying to save everyone when I learned that some people are too broken to be saved. When I realized that mercy toward the dangerous is cruelty toward the innocent. When 11 million corpses taught me that being too gentle, too patient, too forgiving was its own form of murder. He closed his eyes, seeing Lois's face in his mind. The way she'd looked at him with love and terror and confusion, as the kryptonite fear toxin made him see her as doomsday, as his hands closed around her throat, as their child died with her. I will save this world, Superman said quietly. Even if I have to burn away everything I used to be to do it. Even if I have to become what they fear instead of what they love. Even if I have to kill the hero I was to create the peace they need. That's my burden. That's my sacrifice. That's what being Superman actually means. And in Gotham's depths, Master Chief began teaching ordinary humans how to fight like Spartans, knowing that in 3 weeks they'd either change Earth's fate or die trying. The war for humanity's soul had truly begun. The training began at 400 hours because Chief believed that wars were won before breakfast, and anyone too comfortable to wake before dawn was too comfortable to fight gods. The insurgency's training facility was a converted subway maintenance depot 3 levels beneath Gotham's ruined financial district, far enough underground that Superman's X-ray vision would have to actively search for them instead of casually observing, and surrounded by enough lead-lined infrastructure that his superhearing couldn't easily penetrate. It wasn't Fort Benning or the Spartan training grounds on Reach, but Chief had learned to make do with worse. 147 auxiliaries stood in formation as Chief surveyed them with the same critical eye Dr. Halsey had once used on him and his fellow abducted children. Except these weren't children. These were adults, men and women ranging from early 20s to late 50s, representing every demographic Earth offered. Former soldiers who deserted when the regime gave orders their consciences couldn't accept. Police officers who'd watched their departments transform into state enforcers. Teachers who'd fled rather than indoctrinate children with regime propaganda. Ordinary citizens who'd lost family members to re-education centers and decided that comfort wasn't worth the cost. They were soft, undisciplined, carrying the physical evidence of civilian lives, excess weight, poor posture, fear visible in their body language. Chief had worked with worse, but not by much. "My name is Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, he said, voice carrying through the depot with parade ground authority. "Most of you have military or law enforcement backgrounds. Some of you were good at your jobs. None of you is good enough for what's coming." He paused, letting that sink in. "In 3 weeks, you're going to assault hardened military facilities defended by soldiers with energy weapons that can disintegrate you, automated defense systems that make your old training obsolete, and potentially metahuman reinforcements who can kill you before you finish screaming. The statistical probability of casualties is 60 to 70% if everything goes perfectly. Higher if something goes wrong. And something always goes wrong." He watched their faces, looking for the ones who'd break now versus the ones who'd break under fire. Most were afraid, good, fear kept you alert. A few were angry, better, anger fueled aggression. And a handful were calm, already processing the tactical reality with the mindset of people who'd made peace with mortality. Those were the ones he'd make into fire team leaders. "You're not going to be Spartans," Chief continued. "You're not going to be Navy SEALs or ODST shock troopers or anything approaching elite special forces. You don't have the augmentations, the training time, or frankly, the genetic lottery required for that level of capability. But you don't need to be elite. You need to be competent, coordinated, and committed to completing objectives even when everything goes wrong and half your team is dead. That I can teach you." He nodded to Batman, who stood in the shadows observing with his usual predatory stillness. The Dark Knight activated holographic displays showing the 12 target facilities in detail, architectural layouts, guard rotations, defensive emplacements, and estimated civilian populations. "Each facility will be assaulted by a 12-person team," Chief explained, falling into the familiar rhythm of pre-mission briefing. 2 fire teams of 6, each with specific responsibilities. Alpha Team breaches the facility, neutralizes primary resistance, and secures the prisoner evacuation routes. Bravo Team provides overwatch, suppresses reinforcements, and coordinates extraction timing. Both teams train together, eat together, sleep in adjacent quarters, and learn to operate as a single cohesive unit. He gestured, and the holographic display reorganized the auxiliaries into 12 color-coded groups. "These are your teams. These are the people whose lives depend on your competence and whose competence determines whether you survive the next 3 weeks of training, much less the operation itself. Learn their names, learn their capabilities, learn their weaknesses, and learn to trust them with everything you have, because that's the only way any of you make it out alive." A hand raised, a woman in her 30s with the weathered look of someone who'd spent time in combat zones. "Sir, 3 weeks isn't enough time to build unit cohesion. Military doctrine says." "Military doctrine," Chief interrupted, "is designed for conventional warfare against conventional opponents. You're not fighting conventional opponents. You're fighting metahumans, energy weapons, and an orbital surveillance network backed by a god who can hear your heartbeat from space. Conventional doctrine will get you killed." He stepped toward her, not threatening but certain. I've trained soldiers in days who survived combat against enemies that made regime forces look like training dummies. The Covenant glassed entire planets. The Flood consumed civilizations. Forerunner constructs could disintegrate matter with directed energy, and baseline humans without augmentations or advanced technology fought them anyway and sometimes won. You want to know how? They learned fast, adapted faster, and executed their missions with absolute commitment even when the math said they should die. He looked at the assembled auxiliaries, seeing past their fear to the potential underneath. That's what you're going to become. Not elite, not invincible, just competent enough to execute your part of the mission and committed enough to do it even when you're terrified. That's all I need from you. Can you do that? Silence, then from the back of the formation a man's voice, "Yes, sir." Then another, "Yes, sir." Then a chorus growing in volume and certainty, "Yes, sir." Chief allowed himself the ghost of a smile behind his helmet. They weren't soldiers yet, but they wanted to be, and that was the first step. "Training begins now," Chief said. "First exercise. You have 60 seconds to complete a buddy carry of your assigned across this depot and back. Anyone who fails runs the course again. Anyone who quits gets assigned to logistics support instead of combat operations. Move." The depot erupted into controlled chaos as pairs of auxiliaries started dragging, carrying, and supporting each other across the uneven terrain. Some immediately demonstrated competence, ex-military personnel falling into practiced firemen's carries or proper buddy drag techniques. Others struggled. Civilian fitness was insufficient for carrying another adult's weight while moving at speed. Chief watched, evaluating, making mental notes about who would lead fire teams and who needed additional physical conditioning before they'd be combat ready. Batman materialized at his shoulder with the silence of someone who'd made sneaking up on people into an art form. "You're good at this," Batman observed, watching the auxiliaries with analytical intensity. "Natural instructor. Most military trainers break recruits down through intimidation and insults. You're just presenting reality and letting them choose how to respond." Dr. Halsey used to say that Spartans were defined by how they responded to impossible odds, Chief said, not taking his eyes off the training. "Some people break, some people deny, some people adapt. You can't teach that, you can only identify it and shape it into something useful." "Halsey," Batman repeated, and Chief heard the subtle shift in tone that meant the detective was filing information. "Your program's creator, the one who kidnapped children and turned them into super soldiers. You speak about her with respect despite what she did to you." Chief didn't answer immediately. He watched a pair of auxiliaries, one easily 250 pounds of former linebacker, the other maybe 120 soaking wet, struggle through the buddy carry. The smaller one was gasping, legs trembling, clearly operating past exhaustion. But she didn't quit, didn't ask for help, just kept moving one step at a time until she crossed the finish line and collapsed. "Dr. Halsey gave us purpose," Chief said finally. "Took children who would have died on glassed colony worlds or lived meaningless civilian lives and turned us into humanity's best chance at survival. Were her methods ethical? Were they necessary? History says yes. Do I resent her for what she did to us?" He paused, considering. "I don't know how to resent someone for making me into what I needed to be to save my species." Batman was quiet for a long moment. "That's why Superman thinks he's right," he said softly. "Because sometimes terrible choices produce necessary outcomes. Sometimes the ends do justify the means. Sometimes sacrificing the few to save the many is the only logical option. And once you accept that logic, once you start making those choices," he gestured vaguely toward the surface, toward Superman's regime. "Where does it stop? Who decides when the cost is too high?" "The people paying the cost," Chief said immediately. "Dr. Halsey made choices about our lives. We were children, couldn't consent, didn't understand what was being done to us. That was wrong. But as adults, as soldiers, we have to choose whether to keep fighting or walk away. Most of us chose to keep fighting because we believed in what we were protecting. That's the difference. Superman's making choices for Earth's entire population without their consent. If they chose his peace knowing the full cost, that would be different. But he's not giving them that choice. No, Batman agreed, he's not. The first wave of auxiliaries finished their buddy carries, and Chief immediately launched them into the next exercise, fire team movement drills, practicing how to advance under fire using proper bounding overwatch techniques. It was basic infantry doctrine that any UNSC Marine would have learned in boot camp, but many of the auxiliaries had never trained in coordinated small unit tactics. They were sloppy, bunched up instead of maintaining proper dispersion, moved too slowly, telegraphed their intentions, and failed to provide adequate covering fire for advancing elements. But they were learning, adapting, and showing improvement even within the first hour of training. "They won't be ready," a voice said from Chief's other side, and he turned to find Wonder Girl standing there in her red and gold armor. 3 weeks isn't enough. You're giving them basic infantry skills when they'll be fighting enemies who can fly, shoot energy beams, and survive grenades. This is suicide. Yes, Chief agreed without hesitation. But it's suicide with a purpose. Every facility we hit draws regime attention. Every prisoner we free becomes a witness to the regime's atrocities. Even if only half the team succeed, even if casualties are 70%, we'll have freed thousands of political prisoners and demonstrated that the regime can be challenged. That's worth the cost. Is it? Wonder Girl's voice was hard. Is it worth these people's lives? They're not soldiers. They're civilians who decided to fight because they lost people to Superman's regime. You're going to get them killed. They're going to get themselves killed, Chief corrected. I'm just making sure their deaths accomplish something instead of being wasted on failed missions. That's what soldiers do. We turn mortality into tactical advantage. We spend our lives to buy objectives, and everyone here knows that. They volunteered knowing the odds. Denying them the chance to fight just because they'll probably die is denying them agency, same as Superman does. Wonder Girl stared at him, and Chief saw something like recognition in her expression. "You really are a weapon," she said quietly. "A person-shaped weapon pointed at problems that need destroying. Diana tried to make me into that. Tried to teach me that warriors exist to impose order through violence, that strength gives you the right and responsibility to make hard choices for people too weak to make them themselves. I rejected that philosophy because I saw where it led her, to executing my mother. After all, she chose compassion over orders." She paused. "But you're doing the same thing, aren't you? Making choices about what these people's lives are worth, calculating acceptable casualty rates, spending human beings like ammunition." Chief turned to face her directly. "Yes, and the difference between Wonder Woman and me is that I don't pretend I'm doing them a favor. I don't claim it's for their own good or that they should be grateful. I tell them exactly what they're volunteering for, probable death in service of a mission that matters. Then I let them choose. Wonder Woman and Superman make those choices for people. I just give them the information they need to make informed decisions. That's the line." Wonder Girl studied him for 3 long seconds, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I can live with that. Show me the training schedule. I'll handle close-quarters combat instruction. If they're going to die fighting metahumans, they should at least know how to exploit superhuman overconfidence." As she walked toward the auxiliaries, Batman made a sound that might have been approval. "You're building loyalty," he observed. "Not through speeches or manipulation, but by treating them like competent adults capable of making their own choices about mortality. That's rare." "It's efficient," Chief corrected. "Soldiers who choose to be there fight harder than soldiers who were ordered to be there. And we're going to need everyone fighting at maximum efficiency if this operation has any chance of success." The training continued. Hour after hour, day after day, Chief pushed the auxiliaries through exercises that left them exhausted, battered, and progressively more competent. He taught them room-clearing techniques adapted for fighting enemies with superhuman reflexes. He drilled them on evacuation procedures for moving large numbers of traumatized civilians under fire. He trained them to operate regime energy weapons captured by the insurgency, teaching the mechanical principles that made the weapons function and the tactical applications that made them lethal. Victor handled technical training, teaching team leaders how to bypass regime security systems, disable automated defenses, and coordinate timing across 12 simultaneous operations using encrypted communications that regime surveillance couldn't easily intercept. Catwoman taught infiltration techniques, showing them how to move through facilities without triggering alarms, how to blend with regime personnel during initial approach, and how to extract information from security systems. Commissioner Gordon organized logistics, ensuring each team had detailed intelligence on their target facility, evacuation routes mapped, safe houses prepared, and contingency plans for when, not if, things went wrong. Black Canary coordinated with resistance cells globally, preparing local support for each team's extraction. And Batman watched everything, correcting tactical errors, adding complications to training scenarios, pushing the auxiliaries harder than Chief would have dared without the Dark Knight's implicit endorsement. He was testing them, Chief realized, not just evaluating their combat capability but measuring their commitment, their willingness to continue even when the training felt impossible. On day 7, Superman came. Chief was running a live-fire exercise, auxiliaries advancing through a mock-up facility while automated turrets fired training rounds that hurt like hell but wouldn't kill, when every sensor in his armor screamed proximity warnings. Motion trackers are painting red, energy signatures that made no sense. Atmospheric pressure changes indicated something moving impossibly fast. Then Superman was standing in the center of the training depot, having somehow descended through 3 levels of underground infrastructure without triggering any of their perimeter alarms, and the auxiliaries scattered like prey animals confronting an apex predator. Training exercise paused, Chief said calmly into the tactical net, then stepped forward to place himself between Superman and the auxiliaries. His rifle came up automatically, muscle memory overriding the rational knowledge that 7.62 rounds would be useless against whatever physics-defying biology Superman possessed. "Stand down, Spartan," Superman said, hands visible and non-threatening but his mere presence radiating enough power to make Chief's instincts scream. "I'm not here to fight, I'm here to talk." "Then you should have called ahead instead of infiltrating our training facility," Chief said, not lowering his rifle. Behind him, he heard the auxiliaries achieving firing positions, heard weapons charging, felt the weight of 147 people looking to him for tactical guidance on whether to engage a threat they had no chance of defeating. Superman smiled, and it was sad. "Would Batman have let me in if I'd asked politely? Would you have agreed to hear what I have to say without assuming it was manipulation or propaganda?" He looked past Chief to the auxiliaries, his supervision apparently tracking each individual with disturbing precision. "I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here because I need you to understand what you're really doing." "We understand perfectly," Chief said. "We're preparing to free political prisoners you've imprisoned for disagreeing with your regime." "No," Superman corrected, his voice carrying absolute certainty that made Chief's skin crawl. "You're preparing to release thousands of people who have been psychologically evaluated as destabilizing influences on social cohesion. People who genuinely believe their right to spread dangerous ideologies is more important than everyone else's right to safety. And you're teaching these auxiliaries," he gestured to the assembled fighters, "to throw away their lives on a symbolic gesture that will accomplish nothing except getting them killed and making me look justified when I respond with force." He took a step forward and Chief's rifle tracked the movement. "I don't want to kill you, Spartan. Any of you. I've had enough killing. But if you execute this operation, if you attack regime facilities simultaneously across the globe, I will have to respond. Not because I'm a tyrant, but because letting you succeed would signal to every other resistance cell that violence against the regime is viable. That chaos is preferable to order." that some abstract ideal of freedom is worth sacrificing the peace I've built. Superman's eyes started glowing faintly red, and Chief saw several auxiliaries flinch back. So I'm giving you one chance to walk away, all of you. Surrender now, agree to re-education to help you understand why your current beliefs are dangerous, and I'll ensure you're treated fairly. You'll be given therapy, counseling, and support to integrate back into society as productive citizens. You'll live. You'll see your families again eventually. You'll be safe. He paused, the red glow intensifying. Or you can choose violence, can attack my facilities, free prisoners who will just spread more discord and force me to defend the peace with lethal force. And I promise you, when that happens, most of you will die. The Spartan might survive because he's enhanced. Batman has contingencies and will escape like he always does. But the rest of you— Superman looked directly at a young woman Chief had flagged as promising fire team leader material. Maria Torres. Age 26. Former Army corporal, served 2 tours in the Middle East before the regime unified global military forces. You have a daughter, Alina, age 4. She's currently with your sister in Metropolis, attending a regime-approved school where she's safe, fed, and educated. His voice softened. If you die attacking my facilities, Alina loses her mother. She grew up in state care, wondering why you chose terrorism over being there for her. Is Batman's ideology really worth that? Maria's weapon wavered, and Chief saw the doubt spreading through the auxiliaries like poison. Superman was good at this, identifying leverage points, exploiting emotional vulnerabilities, making the pragmatic choice seem like the moral one. That's enough, Batman's voice cut through the depot like a knife, and the Dark Knight emerged from shadows that shouldn't have concealed him. You've made your offer, Clark. They've heard it. Now leave. Have they heard it, though? Superman turned to face Batman, and Chief saw genuine pain in the god's expression. Or have you spent the last week filling their heads with propaganda about freedom and resistance while carefully omitting the part where most of them die and accomplish nothing? Did you tell them that in 3 years of fighting, your insurgency hasn't changed anything except adding to the death toll? Did you mention that I could end your rebellion tomorrow if I wanted? That the only reason you're alive is that I keep hopping you'll see reason? I told them the truth, Batman said coldly. That fighting for freedom means risking everything. That comfort purchased with submission isn't peace, it's imprisonment. That some things are worth dying for, even when victory is statistically impossible. And I gave them a choice, which is more than you ever do. Superman's expression hardened. Choice. You keep using that word like it's sacred, but choice without context is just chaos. These people don't understand the complexities of maintaining global order, don't see the bigger picture I have to manage. They can't make informed decisions because they don't have the information or perspective necessary. That's why leadership exists, Bruce. Someone has to make the hard choices when others can't. No, Chief said, drawing both their attention. Leadership exists to give people the tools and information they need to make their own informed choices. What you're describing isn't leadership. It's a dictatorship with good intentions. Superman looked at Chief with something like disappointment. You could have been an ally, a soldier who understands the necessity of hard choices, the weight of command, and the burden of doing terrible things for the right reasons. We're not that different. You and I, we've both killed to protect people. We've both made choices that haunt us. The difference is I'm trying to create a world where those choices never have to be made again, where no one has to lose what I lost. The difference, Chief corrected, is I killed enemies who were actively trying to exterminate humanity. You're killing people for disagreeing with you. There's no moral equivalence there. Superman's eyes flared brighter, and Chief felt heat wash over his armor like he was standing next to a fusion reactor. Those people, Superman said, voice tight with controlled fury, actively destabilize the order that prevents another metropolis. They spread doubt, encourage rebellion, and create the chaos that evil exploits. The Joker existed because people like them valued freedom over security, because society tolerated monsters in the name of civil rights. Never again. I will not allow another Joker, another madman, another 11 million corpses. Even if it means becoming what Bruce fears, even if it means ruling through strength instead of inspiration. That's my burden. That's my sacrifice. That's what you're too naive to understand. He rose 6 inches off the ground, cape rippling despite the lack of wind. Last chance, all of you, stand down, accept re-education, live, or continue this futile rebellion and die knowing you chose ideology over your families, over your lives, over every rational option available. Choose now. Chief looked at the auxiliaries, saw Maria Torres staring at her weapon, thinking about her daughter, saw others wavering, weighing Superman's offer against Batman's cause, calculating whether freedom was worth their lives. And Chief realized this was the moment. This was where the operation succeeded or failed, not in 3 weeks during the actual assault, but right now, in how these people responded to fear. "Permission to speak freely, sir," Chief said to Batman, using formal military protocol for the first time. Batman nodded. Chief turned to address the auxiliaries, speaking over Superman's hovering presence. "Some of you are thinking about taking his offer, wondering if maybe Superman's right, if maybe your families are worth more than some abstract ideal. That's not cowardice, that's human. Maria, thinking about Alina, wondering if your daughter needs a living mother more than she needs a dead martyr. That's love, not weakness." He paused, making eye contact with as many auxiliaries as his armor's sensors could track. "So here's what I'm telling you: if you want to take Superman's offer, do it. No judgment, no shame. Walk away, take the re-education, go home to your families, but understand what you're choosing. You're choosing comfort over conscience, safety over self-determination. You're choosing to let Superman decide what you're allowed to believe, what you're allowed to say, who you're allowed to be, and maybe that's worth it. Maybe your daughter is worth more than preserving the right to question authority. That's your choice to make." He gestured towards Superman. "But if you stay, if you continue training, if you execute this operation in 3 weeks, understand this too. You're probably going to die. Superman's right about that. Most of you won't survive, and the survivors will spend the rest of their lives hunted, hiding, watching loved ones pay the price for your choices. So you need to decide right now, today, whether dying for the possibility of freedom is worth more than living under the certainty of control." Chief lowered his rifle. "I can't make that choice for you. Batman can't. Superman can't, despite what he thinks. It's your life, your decision, your right. So choose. Stay and fight or leave and live. Either way, I respect your choice because it's yours to make. That's what freedom actually means." Silence. Superman hovered, waiting to see how many would accept his offer. Batman standing perfectly still, trusting Chief's words where his own might fail. The auxiliaries looking at each other, at their weapons, at the training facility that would become their tomb or their transformation. Maria Torres spoke first. "My daughter deserves to grow up in a world where questioning authority doesn't get you imprisoned, where she can make her own choices without a God deciding what's best for her. And if I die to give her that chance..." She raised her weapon, aiming at Superman, knowing it was useless but doing it anyway. Then at least she'll know her mother chose to fight rather than kneel. One by one, the others raised their weapons. Not all of them. 7 auxiliaries set down their rifles and walked towards Superman, accepting his offer with visible relief. Chief watched them go without judgment. They were making the rational choice, the survivable choice, just not the choice warriors made. The remaining 140 chose differently. Superman looked at them, at the weapons aimed at him, at the defiance that should have been impossible against his overwhelming power. And something in his expression shifted, not anger exactly, but profound disappointment. "So be it," he said quietly. "You've made your choice. In 3 weeks, when my forces respond to your attacks, remember this moment. Remember that I offered you mercy, offered you life, and you chose death instead. Your blood is on your own hands. And Bruce," he looked at Batman with something like heartbreak, "their blood is on yours." Then he was gone, ascending through 3 levels of infrastructure as easily as walking through fog. and the auxiliaries stood there with raised weapons, trembling from fear and relief, and the terrible understanding that they'd just committed to probable death. "Training resumes in 5 minutes," Chief said calmly, as if Superman's visit had been a scheduled interruption rather than psychological warfare. "Hydrate, check your gear, and be ready for close-quarters combat drills. Move." The auxiliaries moved, and Chief saw something different in their posture now. Not confident, they weren't experienced enough for that yet, but commitment. They'd made their choice in front of a god and hadn't wavered. That was worth more than a month of training. Batman approached, cape swirling. That was well done, permitting them to leave, presenting Superman's offer as legitimate instead of dismissing it. "They're committed now, not because I demanded it or you manipulated them, but because they chose it freely. That's," he paused, searching for words, "that's what leadership actually looks like." "Dr. Halsey used to say that Spartans who chose to fight were worth 10 who were ordered to," Chief said. "Same principle applies here." "Halsey again," Batman noted. "You keep referencing her. Despite what she did, despite the ethical violations, you still respect her judgment." "She created something that mattered," Chief said. "Took children who would have died meaningless deaths and turned them into humanity's last hope. Were her methods monstrous? Yes. Did they work? Also yes. That's the paradox commanders face. Sometimes terrible choices produce necessary outcomes. The question isn't whether the choice was terrible, it's whether the outcome justified the cost. History decides that, not us." Batman was silent for a long moment. And what does history say about Superman? About a hero who became a tyrant to prevent tragedy? About a god who kills to enforce peace? Is that a terrible choice that produces necessary outcomes? Chief thought about the re-education centers, the executed teenagers. Maria Santos and her children were imprisoned for words. "No," he said finally, "because Superman's not preventing tragedy, he's preventing choice. There's a difference between harsh methods to achieve genuine protection and harsh methods to enforce compliance. The Spartan program protected humanity from extinction. Superman's regime protects humanity from itself. One is a necessary evil, the other is just evil." "Good," Batman said with grim satisfaction. "Because in 3 weeks, you're going to have to kill people who genuinely believe they're protecting the world. Regime soldiers who think they're heroes, who have bought Superman's propaganda, who will die defending facilities they believe are helping people. And I need you to be certain, that you're on the right side when you pull that trigger." "I am," Chief said, and meant it. The training continued. Day after day, the auxiliaries transformed from frightened civilians into something approximating soldiers. They'd never be Spartans, never be elite, but they were learning to move like units, to trust their fire team partners, to execute orders under stress. More importantly, they were learning to believe they could fight gods and maybe survive. On day 14, Oracle reported regime activity escalating. Increased surveillance on known insurgency contacts. Wonder Woman leads strike teams against suspected resistance cells. Regime forces are reinforcing potential targets as if they knew something was coming, but couldn't pinpoint exactly what. "Superman's preparing," Batman said during the evening briefing, the core team assembled around holographic displays. "He knows we're planning something significant. He's spreading his forces, trying to defend everything, which means he'll be strong nowhere. That plays to our advantage." "Unless he's baiting us," Victor countered, his remaining cybernetic eye processing tactical data. "What if he wants us to attack, wants us to commit our forces so he can respond with overwhelming power and crush the insurgency permanently?" "That's possible," Chief admitted. "But it doesn't change the mission parameters. We attack in 1 week regardless of what Superman's planning. The political prisoners are suffering every day we delay. The longer we wait, the more time the regime has to adapt to our preparations. We execute on schedule or we don't execute at all." Commissioner Gordon pulled up casualty projections that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Conservative estimates put our losses at 70% even if everything goes perfectly. If Superman responds faster than we project, if the facilities are more heavily defended than intelligence suggests, if our teams get bogged down evacuating prisoners. He trailed off, apparently unable to articulate just how bad the math could get. Then 70% becomes 90%, Chief finished for him. I know, the auxiliaries know. Everyone executing this mission understands the odds. We're doing it anyway because some things matter more than survival. Freedom is one of them. Wonder Girl studied the holographic display showing all 12 target facilities. After we hit Superman this hard, there's no going back. He'll stop pretending the insurgency is just misguided idealists. He'll come after us with everything he has. Scorched earth, total war. Anyone associated with this operation becomes a priority target for elimination. Good, Killer Croc rumbled from his position near the armory. Tired of hiding anyway. Rather die fighting than live in his perfect prison. Black Canary placed a hand on the display, highlighting the Metropolis Re-Education Center, the facility Chief had personally reconnoitered. This one's mine, she said quietly. I'm leading Alpha Team 1. Maria Torres has my 6. We're getting those prisoners out or we're dying in the attempt. No middle ground. One by one, the team leaders called their targets. Victor is taking the Gotham facility. Catwoman infiltrates the regime's European detention center. Wonder Girl assaulted the facility where her mother had been held. Commissioner Gordon is coordinating from the command center. Batman maintains a mobile response capability to support whichever team runs into unexpected complications. What about you, Spartan? Batman asked. Which facility are you hitting? Chief studied the display, running probability calculations. The Metropolis facility was the highest risk, closest to Superman's primary operating area, most heavily defended, largest civilian population to evacuate. It was also the most symbolically significant. Freeing prisoners from the crater where Superman's fall began would send a message that couldn't be ignored. Metropolis, Chief said. Alpha Team 1 support. I'll provide tactical coordination and heavy weapons support. Someone needs to slow down regime reinforcements long enough for the civilians to evacuate, and I'm the only one here with armor that might survive sustained energy weapon fire long enough to matter. Batman nodded slowly. You understand that's a suicide position. You'll be drawing fire from multiple regime response teams while stationary. Your shields are already compromised. Your ammunition is finite. And Superman will respond to the Metropolis facility first because of its symbolic importance. You'll be fighting him directly within 10 minutes of mission initiation. I know, Chief said, but the mission succeeds or fails in Metropolis. Free prisoners from the crater where Superman's tyranny began and you change the narrative. Prove that Ground Zero can be reclaimed from his control. That's worth dying for. He looked at Batman directly. Besides, I'm a Spartan. We don't die, we just go missing in action. That's what the official reports always say. Batman's lip twitched. Then let's make sure you go missing somewhere that matters. The final week of training passed in a blur of final equipment checks, mission rehearsals, and the grim understanding that this was probably the last week most of them would be alive. Chief pushed them harder than ever, running assault simulations until muscle memory replaced conscious thought, drilling evacuation procedures until even exhausted and wounded, they could coordinate civilian extraction. On the final night, Maria Torres approached Chief as he was conducting weapons maintenance on his rifle, cleaning a weapon that probably wouldn't survive the coming battle, but maintaining it anyway because that's what soldiers did. Sir, she said, then corrected herself. Chief, I wanted to thank you for everything, for training us, for treating us like soldiers instead of cannon fodder, for giving us the choice when Superman tried to take it away. Chief looked up from his rifle. You're going to die tomorrow, he said bluntly. Probably, maybe not, but probably. You understand that? Yes, sir. And you're still committed, still willing to execute your part of the mission even knowing the odds. Yes, sir, she paused. My daughter deserves better than Superman's world, better than re-education centers and enforced compliance and a God deciding what she's allowed to think. If I have to die to give her that chance, to show her that some people fought back even when fighting was impossible. She smiled, and it was heartbreaking in its certainty. Then at least she'll know her mother tried. Chief nodded slowly. Then make it count, complete the mission, get those prisoners out. Let them tell their stories, change the narrative. That's how you win wars against impossible odds, one mission at a time, one objective at a time, one choice at a time. You might die tomorrow, but if you complete your mission first, you'll die having mattered. That's all any soldier can ask for. Maria saluted, crisp military precision despite 3 weeks of training, and walked back to her fire team to make final preparations. Batman appeared from the shadows because apparently that's what he did. She's going to die, he said quietly. They all are, most of them, maybe all of them, and we're sending them anyway because the mission matters more than their lives. How do you live with that? How do you order people to probable death and still sleep at night? Chief thought about Kelly dead on Reach, about Sam detonated in slipspace, about every Spartan who died under his command executing missions that demanded everything they had. You don't, he said finally. You don't live with it or sleep at night. You just keep fighting because stopping means accepting that they died for nothing. So you make sure they didn't. You complete the mission. You accomplish the objective. You make their sacrifice mean something. That's all you can do. Batman nodded, understanding passing between them that needed no further words. Tomorrow, they would attack 12 facilities simultaneously. Tomorrow, most of them would die. Tomorrow, they would discover whether freedom was worth the cost they were about to pay. But tonight, 140 soldiers prepared for war against a god and knew, absolutely knew, that they'd made the right choice even if it killed them. Because some things were worth dying for. And freedom was first among them. The mission began at 300 hours across 12 time zones simultaneously, because wars against gods required perfect coordination and the willingness to sacrifice everything for a single coordinated strike. Chief stood in the back of the insurgency transport as it descended toward Metropolis, watching Alpha Team 1 perform final equipment checks with the practiced efficiency of soldiers who'd accepted their mortality and moved past it. Maria Torres adjusted her body armor, salvaged regime tactical gear, repainted matte black to avoid visual identification. Her weapon, a captured energy rifle that Chief had personally taught her to operate, hummed with lethal potential as she checked the charge. Around her, 11 other operators prepared with the same grim determination. They were going to die, most of them, maybe all of them, but they'd trained for 3 weeks to make that death count for something. 2 minutes to drop zone, Batman's voice came through the tactical net, his stealth aircraft packing their transport while maintaining electronic countermeasures that kept regime surveillance from detecting their approach. All teams report status. The comm channel lit up with confirmations from around the globe. Team 2, Paris facility in position. Team 4, Tokyo Center, ready for breach. Team 7, Johannesburg compound awaiting your mark. 12 teams, 144 operators, all converging on regime re-education facilities simultaneously in what was either humanity's greatest act of coordinated resistance or the largest mass suicide in modern history. Chief activated his helmet's external speakers, addressing Alpha Team 1 directly. You know the mission, you know the odds, you know that Superman will respond within minutes of our breach and that holding him off long enough for civilian evacuation is statistically impossible. He paused, making eye contact with each operator through his golden visor. Do it anyway. Complete the objective. Get those prisoners out. Let them tell the truth about what Superman's peace actually costs. That's all that matters. Not survival, not glory, just the mission, understood? Yes, sir. The response was unanimous. voices steady despite the fear Chief could read in their elevated heart rates and stress hormone levels. Good. Chief chambered a round in his MA-5D assault rifle, the familiar mechanical sound grounding him in purpose. Then, let's go remind a god that humanity doesn't kneel. The transport doors opened to Metropolis night, the city still gleaming despite the late hour, Superman's perfect order maintaining infrastructure and security that made crime impossible and freedom optional. The Metropolis Re-Education Center rose before them, a fortress of red steel and golden energy barriers, this emblem emblazoned across its facade like a brand of ownership. Chief was first out, boots hitting pavement with half-ton impact, motion tracker immediately painting 43 contacts, regime guards patrolling the perimeter with military precision. Behind him, Alpha Team 1 deployed in textbook formation, 2 fire teams moving to flank positions while Chief advanced directly toward the main entrance. All teams, Chief said into the tactical net, execute, execute, execute. And around the world, 12 facilities were breached simultaneously. The Metropolis guards reacted instantly, professional soldiers responding to a threat with trained efficiency. Energy weapons came up, targeting lasers painting Chief's armor as they identified the primary threat. But Chief had fought Covenant elites in powered armor, had learned to read enemy tactics faster than opponents could execute them, and these regime soldiers were baseline humans following predictable doctrine. He moved before they fired, decades of Spartan reflexes letting him cross 20 meters in the time it took them to pull triggers. His rifle spoke in controlled bursts, not aimed to kill, but to disable, targeting weapons and extremities because these soldiers were just following orders, and Chief didn't kill unnecessarily. 3 guards went down with shattered weapons. 2 more collapsed with leg wounds that would heal but prevent them from fighting. The rest scattered for cover, and that 3-second disruption was all Alpha Team 1 needed to breach the perimeter. Bravo Team, establish overwatch, Maria Torres commanded, her voice carrying parade ground authority despite the chaos. Alpha Team with me. Breach charges on the main entrance, 30 seconds. Chief provided covering fire as Maria's team placed shaped charges on the reinforced doors, military-grade explosives that Catwoman had liberated from a regime armory 2 weeks ago. The explosion was precise, controlled, exactly the kind of breach a well-trained unit could execute in its sleep. Then they were inside, and Chief saw what Superman called rehabilitation. The main detention block stretched 3 stories high, chain-link cells packed with prisoners in gray jumpsuits. But unlike his reconnaissance visit, this time the facility was active, guards moving between cells, prisoners being extracted for clarity therapy, and the sounds of psychological conditioning echoing through industrial speakers. A voice Chief recognized as Superman's played on endless loop, explaining why dissent was dangerous, why questioning authority threatened everyone's safety, and why accepting regime guidance was the path to peace. It was indoctrination masquerading as therapy, and Chief's finger tightened on his trigger as righteous anger threatened his tactical focus. Control your fire, Chief commanded, recognizing the rage in Alpha Team's body language. Discriminate targets only. Guards are actively resisting but no executions. We're here to free prisoners, not murder soldiers following orders. Maria's team moved through the facility with practiced efficiency, clearing rooms and herding guards into secure areas. These regime soldiers weren't monsters. They were just people who believed they were maintaining order, protecting society, serving a hero. Killing them would make the insurgency no better than the tyrant they opposed. But not all the guards surrendered peacefully. Contact right, one of Maria's operators shouted, and Chief's motion tracker painted a new threat, a massive figure in heavy armor moving with metahuman speed. Not Superman, something else, someone else. The figure emerged from a security corridor, and Chief's tactical database immediately identified him. Bane. Enhanced strength through the Venom compound, genius-level intellect and tactical commander for the regime's special operations. And he was here in this facility, which meant Superman had anticipated their attack or gotten extremely lucky with guard rotation. "You dare attack the High Counselor's facility?" Bane's voice was distorted through his mask, but carried absolute certainty. "You terrorists truly believe you can challenge order itself?" He moved with shocking speed for someone his size, closing the distance to Chief before Alpha Team could establish firing solutions. A massive fist swung toward Chief's helmet with enough force to shatter concrete, and Chief barely got his arm up to block, the impact sending him sliding backward, armor servos screaming as they absorbed kinetic energy that would have killed a baseline human. Chief had fought brute chieftains in close combat. This wasn't that different, overwhelming strength requiring tactical response rather than matching force. He let Bane overextend on his next swing, ducked inside his guard, and delivered 3 precise strikes to nerve clusters that should have paralyzed a normal human's arm. Bane didn't even flinch. The venom compound apparently provided pain suppression alongside enhanced strength. "Impressive," he rumbled, grabbing for Chief with both hands, "but insufficient." Chief's shields, already weakened from the dimensional breach in weeks without proper recharge, failed as Bane lifted him and threw him into a cell wall. The impact would have killed an unaugmented human. Chief's Spartan enhancements and MJOLNIR armor barely kept him conscious as damage warnings cascaded across his HUD. "Team 1, complete the mission," Chief ordered, forcing himself upright despite cracked ribs and internal bleeding. "I'll handle this contact. Get those prisoners out." Maria hesitated. Chief could see it in her body language, the soldier's instinct to support a teammate under fire warring with the mission objective. But she'd learned well in 3 weeks of training. "Copy that. Alpha Team with me. Move, move, move." They left Chief to face Bane alone, trusting him to survive or at least buy them time. It was the right tactical decision, even if it felt like abandonment. Bane advanced with predatory confidence. "The Spartan, yes. Superman spoke of you. The soldier from another world who chose terrorism over peace. He wanted you recruited. Believed you could be reasoned with." His mask's breathing apparatus hissed. "I told him you were too damaged by your military conditioning to accept proper order. That soldiers like you only understand hierarchy and violence. Seems I was correct." Chief's rifle came up, but Bane was already moving, faster than any human should manage, crossing 10 meters before Chief could acquire target. A massive hand closed around the rifle barrel, crushing it like aluminum foil, and Chief was forced to drop the weapon before Bane could use it as leverage to break his arm. Hand to hand then. Chief had trained in close-quarters combat since age 6, had killed Covenant elites with his bare hands when ammunition ran out, and knew 17 ways to kill an enemy using only a combat knife. But Bane was enhanced, experienced, and fighting in a facility he knew intimately. This was going to hurt. Chief drew his knife and engaged, blade work precise and economical as he targeted arteries, nerve centers, weak points in Bane's armor. The larger man blocked most strikes with armored gauntlets, but Chief was faster, decades of Spartan reflexes compensating for Bane's enhanced strength. Cut here, slash there, constantly moving to prevent Bane from getting a solid grip. Behind them, Chief heard Alpha Team executing their mission, cell doors exploding open, prisoners streaming toward evacuation routes, Maria's voice maintaining calm authority despite the chaos. They were succeeding. The mission was working. All Chief had to do was survive long enough to extract with them. Then his motion tracker painted red across every sensor, and Chief knew their time was up. Superman arrived like divine judgment, descending through the facility's ceiling without bothering to use doors. Concrete and steel simply parted around him as if reality itself couldn't deny the god's passage. He landed between Chief and Bane, eyes already glowing red with barely controlled fury. "Stand down," Superman said, his voice carrying across the entire facility with impossible volume. "All of you, this ends now." Bane immediately stepped back, recognizing absolute authority when he heard it. Chief stood his ground despite every tactical instinct screaming to retreat, knife still in hand, blood dripping from a dozen cuts where Bane had landed glancing blows. "Spartan," Superman continued, and Chief heard genuine disappointment in the god's tone. "You had a choice. I gave you every opportunity to choose peace over violence. Why couldn't you just accept that my way was better, that order beats chaos, that I'm trying to save you?" "Because," Chief said, retrieving his magnum sidearm with his left hand since the rifle was destroyed, "freedom isn't something you give people when they behave. It's what they have by right of being alive. And you took that right away, the moment you decided you knew better than everyone else what they needed." Superman's eyes flared brighter. "I do know better. I've seen more than you can imagine, lived through horrors that would break your mind. Watched the woman I loved die by my own hand because I respected human choice and human law instead of just eliminating threats. Never again. Never again will I let mercy become murder. Never again will I allow freedom to enable catastrophe." He took a step forward, and Chief felt heat wash over his armor like standing next to a star. "So here's what happens next. You surrender. Your team surrenders. The prisoners return to their rehabilitation. And I spent the next decade rebuilding a perfect world where none of this tragedy was necessary." Or, the heat intensified, "You refuse, and I do what I should have done weeks ago. I eliminate the insurgency's strategic assets, starting with you, and teach Batman's terrorists the cost of defying order." Chief's tactical computer ran probability calculations. Survival chance if he engaged, 0%. Mission success if he died here, maybe 40%. Alpha Team might still evacuate prisoners if he bought them enough time. Expected casualty rate across all 12 facilities, higher than projected because Superman's response was faster than intelligence suggested. The math said surrender, said live to fight another day, said tactical withdrawal was the only logical choice. But Chief had never been particularly good at logic when principle was on the line. "No," Chief said simply and fired. The M6H Magnum's armor-piercing rounds were as effective against Superman as spitting. The bullets struck his chest and flattened like clay against invulnerable skin. But Chief kept firing anyway, kept pulling the trigger even when the magazine ran empty, because sometimes the act of resistance mattered more than its effectiveness. Superman's heat vision lanced out, precise and controlled, and Chief's magnum melted in his hand, the weapon simply ceasing to exist as molecular bonds broke under directed stellar heat. Chief dropped the molten slag, drew his combat knife, and charged because Spartans didn't retreat and soldiers didn't quit, and sometimes you had to fight impossible battles just to prove they weren't inevitable. He covered maybe 3 steps before Superman moved, faster than Chief's enhanced reflexes could track, a blue-red blur that was suddenly behind him with one hand closed around Chief's helmet. Superman lifted the Spartan like he weighed nothing, held him suspended with casual ease that made Chief struggling irrelevant. "You're brave," Superman said quietly, almost gently. "Stupid but brave, willing to die for an ideal even when dying accomplishes nothing. That used to be what I admired about humanity, that capacity for self-sacrifice in service of something larger. Now I just see it as a tragic waste." He squeezed, and Chief felt his helmet beginning to crack under pressure that could crush mountains. His HUD flickered, life support warnings cascading as the armor's integrity failed. This was it. This was how it ended, not fighting the Covenant, not defending Earth from the flood, but crushed by a god who thought tyranny was mercy. Then Oracle's voice exploded across the tactical net. "All teams, mission accomplished. All teams report successful prisoner liberation. I repeat, all 12 facilities compromised, all political prisoners evacuated. Regime response too slow, we fucking did it." Superman froze, his grip loosening fractionally as the implication registered. All 12, that's impossible. I had response teams prepared. I reinforced key facilities. How did you? Because you're predictable, Batman's voice cut in, and Chief saw him on the facility's roof through security camera feeds patched into his failing HUD. You reinforced the facilities you thought were most vulnerable based on insurgency patterns. But we changed our tactics, adapted, used your own strategic thinking against you. While you were here crushing the Spartan, we were liberating thousands of political prisoners across the globe. They're already spreading into the population, already telling their stories, already changing the narrative. You've lost, Clark, not militarily, but symbolically. And symbols matter, you taught me that. Superman's hand trembled with barely controlled rage, and Chief felt the pressure on his helmet increasing again. Then I'll just have to recapture them. All of them. Every single prisoner. Prove that resistance is futile. Prove that my order is inevitable. You could do that, Batman agreed. Hunt down thousands of freed prisoners, re-imprison them, maintain the lie that your re-education centers are humane, but you'd have to do it publicly now. Everyone's watching. Every news outlet on Earth is broadcasting footage of your rehabilitation centers, of the psychological torture, of the children imprisoned for their parents' beliefs, of the mass graves. You can't suppress this, Clark. It's too big, too widespread. The truth is out. Superman stood there, holding Chief's cracking helmet, apparently processing the magnitude of his strategic defeat. Then, slowly, carefully, he set Chief down and stepped back. "You're right," Superman said, his voice empty of everything except exhausted resignation. "I can't recapture them all without exposing methods I'd prefer remained classified. Can't maintain the humanitarian pretense if I'm publicly hunting traumatized prisoners. Can't claim moral authority while committing obvious atrocities where cameras can see." He looked at Chief with something that might have been respect. "You cost me 3 years of careful image management, forced me to show my hand, made me reveal the iron fist beneath the velvet glove, and you did it knowing you'd probably die in the attempt." His eyes stopped glowing, returning to normal blue. "That takes courage. Misguided, self-destructive courage, but courage nonetheless." Superman rose into the air, cape flowing. The perfect symbol of power and control, marred only by the growing understanding that control required eternal vigilance, and eternal vigilance was its own form of defeat. "So here's what happens now. I let you and your teams extract. Let the prisoners spread their propaganda. Let Batman claim his symbolic victory. And then I rebuild, adapt. Find new methods that can't be exposed because they're harder to photograph, subtler, more sophisticated. The regime doesn't end today, it evolves." He looked at Batman on the rooftop. "You wanted to give people choice. Fine, they'll choose. And when they realize that my order, even revealed as harsh, is still better than your chaos, when they decide safety matters more than freedom, when they vote to restore my authority because crime starts rising and wars start brewing, and all the old horrors return without my control, then you'll understand that you didn't free them. You just condemned them to learn the hard way why I was necessary." Superman ascended toward the clouds, a god departing after delivering judgment, and Chief collapsed as his damaged armor finally gave out. Around him, Alpha Team 1 was evacuating the last prisoners. Maria Torres helping an elderly woman navigate rubble, other operators carrying children too traumatized to walk, everyone moving with urgent efficiency born of knowing Superman could return any second. "Chief," Maria was suddenly there, supporting his armored weight despite being a third his size. "We need to move. Can you walk?" Chief forced himself upright, servos grinding, armor barely functional but still operational enough to get him to extraction. "Mission status: complete, sir. All prisoners were evacuated from this facility. Other teams are reporting similar success across all 12 targets. Casualties." She paused, clearly struggling with the numbers. 47 operators KIA, another 38 wounded, but we got them out, got all the prisoners out. The mission succeeded. 47 dead, a third of their force, exactly within projected casualty rates, which somehow made it worse. They'd known this would happen, had planned for it, had accepted it as a necessary cost. Chief thought about those 47 soldiers, about their families who'd never see them again, about the choice they'd made to die for people they'd never met. Then their deaths mattered, Chief said, letting Maria help him toward the extraction point. Complete the mission and sacrifice means something. That's all we can do. They moved through Metropolis streets now filling with freed prisoners. Men, women, children streaming from the re-education center, some crying, some laughing, all carrying the physical and psychological scars of Superman's mercy. News drones were already filming, broadcasting live footage that the regime couldn't suppress fast enough. The truth was spreading like wildfire through a world that had been starved for truth. Batman's transport descended, stealth systems disabled, because hiding didn't matter anymore. The insurgency had just executed the most successful operation in their 3-year resistance. Chief collapsed into the troop bay, armor failing as medical warnings screamed that he had maybe an hour before internal injuries required professional treatment. But around the world, 12 teams were extracting. Thousands of political prisoners were freed. The truth about Superman's regime was spreading beyond the regime's ability to contain. And Earth's population would now have to choose, consciously choose, whether safety through tyranny was worth more than dangerous freedom. "We did it," Maria said, voice cracking with exhaustion and grief and something like triumph. "We actually did it. Lost nearly a third of our people, but we did it." Chief looked at her through his cracked visor. "No, you did it. You and the other operators who chose to fight knowing the odds. I just gave you the training. The courage, the commitment, the willingness to die for something that mattered. That was all you." Batman appeared in the troop bay, cowl pulled back to reveal Bruce Wayne's face for the first time since Chief had arrived in this universe. He looked older than Chief had imagined, more worn, carrying the weight of 3 years fighting an impossible war. But for the first time, he was smiling. "Oracle's compiling the footage now," Batman said. "Every re-education center, every moment of torture disguised as therapy, every political prisoner's testimony. We're distributing it through every channel we can access. Social media, news outlets, even hacking regime propaganda networks to broadcast it. Superman can't suppress this. It's too big, too widespread, too true." He looked at Chief directly. "You said you were a soldier from another universe's war, asked how to fight a god. Well, this is how. You expose him. You force him to reveal his true methods. You give people the information they need to make informed choices. And then you trust them to choose wisely, even when trusting humanity is the hardest thing in the universe." Commissioner Gordon's voice came through the calm, gruff, and proud. "First reports coming in from civilian populations. There are protests forming in Metropolis, Gotham, Paris, Tokyo, everywhere the prisoners returned. People are questioning the regime, demanding answers. Some are even calling for Superman to step down, to face accountability for what he's done. And some are defending him," Oracle added, her tone more measured. "Saying the re-education was necessary, that the prisoners were dangerous, that Superman's methods were harsh but justified. The population's splitting. We've created the choice Batman wanted, but we can't control which choice people make." "We're not supposed to control it," Chief said, forcing himself to sit upright despite protest from every damaged system in his armor. "That's the whole point. Freedom means letting people make their own choices, even terrible ones. Even choices we disagree with. We gave them information, gave them the truth. What they do with it is up to them." The transport rose above Metropolis, and through the failing optics of his helmet, Chief saw the city transforming before his eyes. Protests and counter-protests are forming. Regime soldiers looked uncertain as civilians confronted them with questions they couldn't answer. The perfect order Superman had built was cracking along fault lines that exposure had revealed. It wasn't a victory. The regime still controlled most of Earth's military capacity. Superman was still a god with the power to enforce his will. Wonder Woman and the rest of the regime's heroes hadn't been defeated, just embarrassed. The war was far from over. But for the first time in 3 years, Earth's population had a genuine choice. Had the information they needed to decide consciously whether Superman's peace was worth its cost. Had the option to resist, to question, to demand better from their protectors. And some of them, maybe not most, maybe not even many, but some, were choosing freedom. "What happens now?" Maria asked quietly, looking at the city below where her daughter presumably still lived, still attended regime schools, still grew up in Superman's world. "We've exposed the truth, made people choose, but Superman's not going to just accept this. He'll adapt, as he said, find new methods, and we're down to maybe 100 operators after today's casualties. How do we keep fighting when he controls everything and we're this depleted?" Chief thought about the Covenant War, about humanity losing colony after colony, fleet after fleet, battle after battle, about 30 years of tactical defeats that should have meant extinction but didn't because humanity kept fighting anyway, kept adapting, kept surviving, kept choosing to resist even when resistance seemed futile. "Same way any resistance survives," Chief said. "One day at a time, one mission at a time, one choice at a time. We find the people who chose freedom today and we protect them. We expose the regime's next evolution and give people new information. We survive, adapt, and keep fighting until either we win or we die trying. That's all soldiers can do. That's all anyone can do against impossible odds." He looked at Batman, at Maria, at Black Canary piloting the transport, at all the survivors of Operation Liberation who'd chosen to fight a god and lived to tell about it. "You asked me how to fight a god. Now you know. You don't beat him through superior force. You beat him by refusing to submit, by showing others that resistance is possible, by proving that some people will never kneel no matter how powerful the tyrant becomes. Superman can kill us, can hunt us, it can make us suffer. But he can't make us bow. That's our victory, that's what matters." Across Metropolis, across Earth, thousands of freed prisoners told their stories to anyone who would listen. News broadcasts played footage of re-education centers that couldn't be dismissed as propaganda because they were too detailed, too consistent, too horrifyingly real. And 7 billion people began the difficult, dangerous process of deciding for themselves whether safety through submission was worth more than the risk of freedom. Some would choose submission, would decide Superman's peace, even revealed as harsh, was preferable to the chaos his absence might bring. That was their right. But others, a growing number of others, were choosing differently. We're looking at the freed prisoners, at the insurgency's success, at the truth that had been hidden from them, and deciding that maybe freedom was worth fighting for after all. And in the Fortress of Solitude, Superman watched the broadcasts with growing horror and determination, watched his carefully constructed image crumble, watched Earth's population questioning his authority, watched the perfect world he'd built beginning to fracture along lines he couldn't easily repair. "Diana," he said into his communicator, voice tight with controlled fury, "mobilize the full regime council, prepare contingency protocols. If Earth's population won't accept order willingly, we'll need to be prepared to enforce it more directly. No more pretending we're democratic. No more pretending they have a choice. From now on, the regime shows its true face, absolute power maintaining absolute order, no matter the cost." Wonder Woman's response was immediate. "Are you certain, Cal? Once we abandon the humanitarian pretense, once we reveal ourselves as the authoritarian force we've always been, there's no going back. We become the tyrants Bruce accuses us of being." "We were always tyrants, Diana," Superman said quietly, sadly, but with absolute certainty. "We just pretended otherwise to make it more palatable. Bruce forced our hand, made us show what we really are. So be it. Better to rule as acknowledged tyrants than die as failed idealists. At least this way, Earth survives, even if humanity never forgives us for saving them." He closed the communication and looked at Earth spinning below his fortress, 7 billion lives he'd sworn to protect, even from themselves. The Spartans and Batman had won a symbolic victory, had exposed the truth, had given people a choice. And Superman would spend the rest of his existence proving that the truth didn't matter as much as survival, that choice was a luxury Earth couldn't afford, and that tyranny, honest, acknowledged, unapologetic tyranny, was the price of peace in a universe where 11 million could die because someone valued freedom over security. The war for Earth's soul had entered a new phase. The insurgency had proven that resistance was possible. Superman had accepted that ruling through fear was necessary. And caught between them, 7 billion humans would have to choose which future they wanted, dangerous freedom or safe submission. History would judge which choice was right. But for now, the choice existed. And that, Master Chief reflected as his armor's life support finally failed and unconsciousness claimed him, was what they'd fought for. Not victory, not peace, just the possibility of choice in a universe that tried to eliminate it. Some things were worth dying for. Freedom was first among them. And the legend of the Spartan, who came from another universe to teach Earth how to fight a god, would endure long after the soldier himself disappeared into myth. The Master Chief survived his injuries, though his Mjolnir armor was damaged beyond the insurgency's ability to repair. Without access to UNSC technology or compatible replacement parts, the Spartan who'd fought the Covenant for 30 years found himself operating at diminished capacity in a universe where gods walked as heroes and tyrants claimed the mantle of salvation. But damaged armor didn't make him less dangerous. If anything, fighting without shields, without full systems, without the technological advantages he'd relied on for decades, forced Chief to become more tactical, more precise, more fundamentally lethal in ways that transcended equipment. He became Batman's strategic advisor, the soldier who understood asymmetric warfare against overwhelming force. He trained new insurgency recruits who flocked to the resistance after seeing what Superman's peace truly cost. He planned operations that chipped away at regime infrastructure one mission at a time, proving that even gods could bleed if you knew where to cut. And across Earth, the freed political prisoners told their stories. Some were dismissed as propaganda. Some were believed and sparked outrage. Some changed nothing except giving voice to suffering that Superman would have preferred to remain silent. But the truth was out, spreading through populations that had never been given the choice to accept or reject Superman's rule. And with truth came division, those who chose security over freedom warring ideologically against those who chose freedom over security. The regime adapted, became more overtly authoritarian, and dropped the pretense of humanitarian concern in favor of naked power enforcement. Earth didn't become free. The insurgency didn't win. Superman's regime remained the dominant force, maintaining control through demonstrated power rather than manufactured consent. But the possibility of resistance endured. The knowledge that some people would never submit, no matter the cost, infected Earth's consciousness like a virus that authority couldn't eliminate. And in Gotham's shadows, in resistance cells across the globe, in the hearts of people who'd seen truth and couldn't unsee it, the fight continued. Master Chief never found his way home. The dimensional breach that brought him to the Injustice universe remained a mystery, the technology to reverse it beyond even Batman's genius or Superman's resources. He was stranded in a universe not his own, fighting a war he'd inherited by accident, dying slowly as his damaged armor degraded and his augmented body aged without proper medical support. But he was a Spartan, and Spartans didn't quit just because the war was unwinnable, didn't surrender just because going home was impossible, didn't stop fighting just because every day brought them closer to death. They fought until they couldn't anymore. Then they fought a little longer. Then they became legends that inspired others to keep fighting when rational calculation said to give up. The Master Chief became Earth's legend, the soldier from another universe who taught humanity that gods could be resisted, that tyrants could be exposed, that freedom was worth any cost, including death. His designation, Spartan 117, became a symbol the regime couldn't eliminate, a number that appeared in graffiti across subjugated cities, a rallying cry for people who chose dangerous freedom over safe submission. And somewhere in Gotham's depths, wearing armor held together by determination and Batman's engineering, a soldier who'd saved one universe continued fighting for another, knowing he'd never live to see victory, but fighting anyway because that's what soldiers did. Because some things were worth dying for. And freedom was first among them. The war between Superman's order and humanity's choice would continue for years, maybe decades, maybe forever. But thanks to a Spartan who crashed into the wrong universe at the wrong time and made exactly the right choice, it would be a war fought by people who knew the truth, understood the cost, and chose their path consciously rather than having it chosen for them. That wasn't victory. But for a soldier who'd spent 30 years fighting impossible odds, it was enough. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. More stories await.